Chapter 35-29. What's going on? Yin Zhongtian and the others turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Although the rumbling sound came from within Qin Feiyang's body, they could still hear it clearly. All of them were extremely bewildered. Not good. His physical body is exploding. Think of something quickly, or he will definitely be smashed to smithereens. The black-bearded old man's face changed as he roared at Yin Zhongtian. Yin Zhongtian revealed a bitter smile. What else could he do now? He could only use the sovereign divine weapon. But just as Yin Zhongtian was about to call out the sword of the Grim Reaper, the rumbling sound within Qin Feiyang's body suddenly soared to a deafening level. It sounded as if an ancient door was opening. And at the same time, Qin Feiyang's mangled body released wisps of purplish gold divine light, covering every inch of his flesh, every single cell. This is... The white-eyed wolf looked at this scene and shuddered, because it was biting Qin Feiyang's arm. It could clearly sense the changes in Qin Feiyang at this moment. This purplish gold divine light was not from any treasure, but from Qin Feiyang's blood. One must know, ever since he had taken the elixir given by Qin Batian, Qin Feiyang's blood had always been no different from a normal person's. So now, seeing the purplish gold divine light appear, it was extremely surprised. Moreover, because the white-eyed wolf was biting Qin Feiyang's arm, Qin Feiyang's blood had also flowed into its mouth. It could clearly sense that the purplish gold dragon blood, hidden within his blood, was quickly awakening. In short, it had already tasted the dragon blood. What is going on? Yin Zhongtian and the others were extremely bewildered. Rumble. Suddenly, an exceptionally loud sound rang out from within Qin Feiyang's body. Following that, a vast and mighty dragon's might roared out and surged out in all directions from all directions. Dragon's might! Yin Zhongtian and the others stared angrily. Why was there a dragon's might rushing out from Qin Feiyang's body? Could it be that he was transformed from a divine dragon? But that's not right. That was Yin Zhongtian's rejection. If Qin Feiyang was the incarnation of a divine dragon, then why would he fight against dragons? Then he looked at Qin Feiyang. The blood-red blood had already disappeared, replaced by extremely pure purple-gold dragon blood. The purple-gold dragon blood has recovered. Could it be that the pill given by Qin Batian has an expiration date? The white-eyed wolf grumbled. With the recovery of the purple-gold dragon blood, Qin Feiyang's eyes also emitted beams of purple-gold divine light that were as dazzling as two scorching suns. Boom! The next moment, a terrifying aura rushed out from Qin Feiyang's body. This was not the aura of cultivation, nor was it the aura of divine power or the power of laws. Instead, it was the aura of the physical body. His body was shrouded in purple-gold divine light. He looked like a piece of divine metal that was glowing with divine light. Holy shit! The white-eyed wolf carefully sized up Qin Feiyang. Suddenly, his pupils shrank, and he roared in his heart. He realized that Qin Feiyang's physical body was transforming. That's right. Originally, Qin Feiyang's physical body had already reached the supreme level, but he was unable to break through the shackles and strengthen himself to the heaven-defying level. At that moment, the white-eyed wolf could clearly feel that Qin Feiyang's physical body was transforming towards the heaven-defying level. He had actually broken through the limit, and it was the limit of his physical body. Boom! After a few breaths, an unparalleled aura rushed out from Qin Feiyang's body. This aura had reached the heaven-defying level. This, Yin Zhongtian and the others were also dumbfounded. As long as one was not a fool, they could see that Qin Feiyang was transforming. At the moment his physical body was transforming, Qin Feiyang's depleted energy surged out from every inch of his body like a fountain. At that moment, Qin Feiyang could feel that the gravitational force pressing down on him had weakened a lot. If he were to calculate it in numbers, it should be a tenth. Even he himself had not thought that this unintentional action would be able to break through the shackles of that elixir and revive the purple-gold dragon blood, even breaking through the limits of his physical body. The storm was still raging. Yin Zhongtian and the others were also reaching their limits as they swayed and swayed. Seeing the situation, Qin Feiyang took a step back and landed on the ground. The gravitational force was reduced by a tenth, and his strength was fully recovered, as he was finally able to stand firmly on the ground. He then grabbed hold of the ingrate with one hand, and Yun Zhongtian with the other as he shouted, "Everyone hold tight!" Looking at Qin Feiyang standing proudly in the midst of the raging winds, Yun Zhongtian, the black-bearded old man, and the others seemed to have found a pillar of support in their hearts, as they held onto each other's hands tightly. Even their depleted energy seemed to have recovered quite a bit. Time passed by breath after breath. About 500 to 600 breaths. The storm finally left. Yun Zhongtian and the others did not care about their image at all as they sprawled out on the desert, all of them panting heavily. The white-eyed wolf was even more wretched. There was not a single part of his body that was intact, and the white bones were clearly visible. Although Qin Feiyang had regained his strength, but because his injuries were too severe, once the storm had passed, he sat down on the ground in exhaustion, his entire body in unbearable pain. But at that moment, his excitement was greater than the pain. This excitement was not because of the revival of the purple gold dragon blood, but because of the evolution of his physical body. In the past, his physical body, if measured by the level of a divine artifact, was only a supreme-grade divine artifact, not even close to the threshold of a heaven-defying divine artifact. But now, his physical body had evolved to a heaven-defying divine artifact, which was equivalent to a lower-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. In other words, in the past he could crush a supreme-grade divine artifact with his bare hands. But now, he could fight against a heaven-defying divine artifact with his bare hands. It could be said that this was a breakthrough by leaps and bounds. Most importantly, as long as he could successfully open this door, it would be much easier for his physical body to evolve in the future. The white-eyed wolf said angrily, "Little Qin Zi, damn you. Hurry up and give me the elixir. Do you want to see me die?" Huh. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses. Looking at the wretched state the white-eyed wolf was in, he could not help but want to laugh. He took out a dozen or so elixirs, and gave them to the white-eyed wolf, Yun Zhongtian and the others. He took one for himself as well. Without the storm, the gravity had also decreased a little, so his injuries healed very quickly. The white-eyed wolf said with a bitter face, "Little Qin Zi, you're awesome. You actually made your physical body evolve. When the little crazy brat sees this, he'll definitely be envious and jealous." "I'm also very surprised." Qin Feiyang shook his head with a smile. The white-eyed wolf rolled his eyes. Even rolling his eyes was tiring. Then, as if he had realized something, he looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise and asked, "Wait a minute. You look so relaxed. Could it be that the gravity is also gone?" "Yes, but it's weakened quite a bit. About a tenth of it. It's barely bearable." Qin Feiyang nodded. "There's such a benefit to evolving your physical body?" The white-eyed wolf was stunned. Hearing this, Yun Zhongtian and the others slowly got up and looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said, "I think this is the way to break the gravity. Strengthen the physical body and counteract the gravity?" Yun Zhongtian asked. "That's right. As the physical body strengthens, the gravity will continue to decrease." Qin Feiyang nodded. "That doesn't make sense. According to what you said, that heaven-defying artifact should be able to withstand this gravity. After all, your current physical body is only at the same level as a low-level heaven-defying artifact." Yun Zhongtian frowned. "You can't compare it like that. Besides, the rules of the heavy regions may be set by people. If it's really set by people, then there will naturally be some targeting. If the physical body works, then the heaven-defying artifact might not. In short, we can't use ordinary thinking to think about places like this." Qin Feiyang said. "That's true." Yun Zhongtian nodded and then sighed. "You really amaze people time and time again." "Amaze? What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "It's your physical body. Look at our sky cloud realm. Who can raise the strength of their physical body to the heaven-defying level? In the eyes of others, this is simply impossible." Yun Zhongtian smiled bitterly. "Yes, in today's world, everyone knows that the limit of the physical body is the supreme level. This is the first time this old man has seen a heaven-defying level physical body." The black-bearded old man and the others were also sighing. Otherwise, Who would dare to believe it when they saw it with their own eyes? In fact, I have been looking for a way to break the limits of the physical body in the past. But as you said, no one has succeeded, so there was no one to ask for advice. And this time, to be honest, I didn't have such an idea at all. I just wanted to try and see if I could break a certain limit. In other words, it wasn't specifically to break the limits of the physical body, but I didn't expect that I would accidentally break the limits of the physical body. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. Yun Zhongtian asked, "Then, the limit of the heaven-defying level isn't much different from before, and it still requires external force?" From the looks of it, that's the case. It just requires a stronger external force, and not everyone can withstand it. And the most important thing should be perseverance, will, and never give up, an indomitable state of mind. Qin Feiyang analyzed. Perseverance, will, and one's state of mind need not be said. They are all necessary. And this external force is really not something the average person can withstand. Just now, when I saw your physical body explode, I thought you were going to be smashed to pieces. Yun Zhongtian shook his head. If Qin Feiyang had not succeeded, he would have been smashed to pieces. But fortunately he had succeeded. When the white-eyed wolf heard that, he did not make a sound, his eyes darting around, not knowing what he was thinking. While they were talking, Qin Feiyang's skin was almost completely repaired. He turned around and took out a shirt to wear. On one hand, it was to cover his embarrassment, and on the other hand, it was to hide his potential mark. Brother Qin, I have a question, I think. Yun Zhongtian looked at Qin Feiyang, hesitating to speak. After Qin Feiyang put on his clothes, he turned his head to look at Yun Zhongtian, and then at the black-bearded old man and the others. They all had a suspicious look in their eyes as he smiled faintly. Do you want to ask if I am a divine dragon? Yes. Yun Zhongtian nodded. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Yun Zhongtian asked suspiciously. Then why do you have the bloodline power of the divine dragon, and the legendary purple gold dragon blood? One must know, the purple gold divine dragon, even in the sky cloud realm, was a legendary existence. They had heard of it, but no one had ever seen it. And now, the purple gold dragon blood actually appeared in a human's body. Think about it, how strange was that? It's hereditary. I'm not sure about the specifics. We need to slowly investigate it in the future. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Hereditary? The group looked at each other. Could it be that this child was the descendant of the purple gold divine dragon, and a human? Chapter 35:30. The white-eyed wolf glanced at the group of people and said telepathically, Little Qinzi, do we need to silence them? Silence them? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. The white-eyed wolf thought, that's right. Look, they all saw your purple gold dragon blood. If we don't silence them, what if they spread the news? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh and said telepathically, There's no need to silence them because it doesn't matter if they are exposed now. At most, it will cause a stir. Besides, his greatest enemy was the dragons. If the dragons didn't know, it was indeed necessary to hide, so that they wouldn't target him when they heard the news. But now, the dragons already knew everything about him. So now there was no need at all. All right, you decide. The white-eyed wolf didn't say anything else. Suddenly, there's someone. Yun Zhongtian looked at the desert ahead, his eyes flashing. Qin Feiyang and the others were also shocked. They hurriedly looked up, and their pupils immediately shrank. At the end of the desert ahead, they really saw a blurry figure. I didn't expect that other than us, there would be someone who dares to go so deep, the black-bearded old man muttered. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and looked at the group of people. Don't worry about that. Let's heal first. Okay. The group of people nodded and sat cross-legged on the ground, using the energy of the divine life pill to quickly heal their injuries. Qin Feiyang walked to the white-eyed wolf and frowned. You can't go on like this. What? Are you starting to dislike me for dragging you down? The white-eyed wolf scowled. Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed and said speechlessly, You have a rich imagination. Do you think I'll dislike you? I think you're looking at me with disdain. The white-eyed wolf snorted. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead and said angrily, Can't you speak properly? What I mean is, why don't you give it a try and see if you can break through the limits of your physical body with the help of this gravity? The white-eyed wolf fell silent. No confidence? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Get lost. The white-eyed wolf felt as if his tail had been stepped on. He shouted angrily. There is no such word in my dictionary. If that's the case, why are you still hesitating? Qin Feiyang looked at it mockingly. I didn't hesitate. The white-eyed wolf glared fiercely at Qin Feiyang and said with a pout. I just don't feel good. Why are you the one who broke the limits of your physical body first? In terms of talent, perseverance, and mental state, I don't lose to you. Save it. Your talent, perseverance, and state of mind are indeed good. But have you ever tried? Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about the power of laws. All you think about all day long is depriving others of it. You don't work hard at all. Qin Feiyang's face was full of disdain. When the white-eyed wolf heard this, he immediately retorted, There is a big problem with your words. What problem? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Depriving others of their laws also requires hard work, okay? If you don't work hard to snatch it, do you think others will give it to you with both hands? The white-eyed wolf said. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Don't you think it makes sense? The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. This is the logic of a bandit. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Why do you care if I'm a bandit or a robber? Anyway, it's fine as long as I can become stronger. The white-eyed wolf raised his head like a proud miser, making Qin Feiyang feel helpless. But the white-eyed wolf laughed again and said, The limits of the physical body indeed need to be broken. I can't lose to you. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched, and he said helplessly, Can you not always think about winning or losing with me? Senior brother Feng Zi is the same. I don't understand. With our friendship, is there a need for this? The white-eyed wolf said, I really want to compete with others, but there's no other way. Can you find someone better than us in the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm? Qin Feiyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If these words were to spread in the Sky Cloud realm, it would definitely cause public outrage. Okay, don't disturb me. Now, I need to recuperate and store up my strength, so that I can break the limits of the physical body in one fell swoop. The white-eyed wolf was full of pride, but he was a little weak in his heart. If the limits of the physical body were really so easy to break, then Qin Feiyang wouldn't have been stuck in the supreme realm for so many years. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed, looking up into the depths of the desert. Immediately, there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. The shadow that he had seen earlier was still there. It had not taken a single step forward, nor had it taken a single step backward. Strange, Qin Feiyang muttered. Suddenly, he frowned slightly and looked over. He found that it didn't look like the shadow of a person, but more like the shadow of a building. Impossible. How could there be a building in the heavy region? He looked at it seriously for a while, and finally confirmed that it was indeed not a human figure. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang finally suppressed the curiosity in his heart, sat down cross-legged, and began to recuperate. He wanted to go take a look now, but in such an environment, he really didn't dare to act alone. It wasn't because he was worried about his own safety, but because he was worried about the safety of the white-eyed wolf, Yin Zhongtian, and the others. If they accidentally got separated, or encountered a storm or other dangers, there wouldn't be anyone to take care of them. So now, no matter where they went, they had to go together. Time flew by. The next day early morning, their injuries were finally healed, and their essence, qi and spirit were restored to their peak state. The group of people opened their eyes one after another. Qin Feiyang looked at the desert in front of him again. The shadow was still there. Even though a day had passed, it didn't move at all. This confirmed his inner thoughts that it wasn't a human figure. Yun Zhongtian and the others soon found that the shadow was still there, and there was a look of surprise in their eyes. According to my observation, it shouldn't be a human figure. It may be the shadow of a building, but it's too far away to see clearly. Coupled with the atmosphere in the heavy region, our first reaction was to think that it was the shadow of a person. Qin Feiyang said, A building. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, Yin Zhongtian and the others suddenly showed surprise in their eyes. Have you all recuperated? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. Yin Zhongtian and the others nodded. Then let's go and have a look. Qin Feiyang smiled and took the lead to walk into the depths of the desert. Little Qin, wait. The white-eyed wolf's voice suddenly sounded behind them. Qin Feiyang stopped and turned to look at the white-eyed wolf suspiciously. The white-eyed wolf was lying on the ground, facing the terrifying gravity. It was difficult for him to even move. He said, You guys go first. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yin Zhongtian was also stunned when he heard this and quickly asked, Brother Wolf King, where are you going? You can't run around alone in the heavy region. It's okay. I'll be there soon, the white-eyed wolf said. This? Yin Zhongtian looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at the white-eyed wolf and shook his head with a smile. Do as you wish. Brother Qin, you. Yin Zhongtian looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. He actually let the white-eyed wolf stay here alone. It's okay. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, took out the horsetail whisk, and said with a smile, Follow the white-eyed wolf, and come find us in the depths. Okay. The horsetail whisk responded and disappeared into the white-eyed wolf's body. Good luck. Qin Feiyang chuckled at the white-eyed wolf, then turned and walked into the depths without looking back. Yin Zhongtian looked at the white-eyed wolf with a trace of suspicion on his face, then turned and chased after Qin Feiyang. He really didn't understand what the white-eyed wolf was going to do. One had to know. The gravity here had reached the level that the white-eyed wolf could withstand, and it couldn't even get up. Leaving it here alone was undoubtedly waiting for death. However, since Qin Feiyang had already agreed, then he couldn't say anything more. Moreover, Qin Feiyang had left the horsetail whisk behind to protect the white-eyed wolf, so there shouldn't be any accidents. The black-bearded old man and the others looked at each other, a trace of deep fear in their eyes as they hurriedly chased after Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian. Along the way these days, seeing Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf in such a sorry state, they had almost forgotten that these people had sovereign divine weapons in their hands. With the sovereign divine weapons in their hands, even if they were to face an unresolvable crisis of death, they wouldn't really fall. In other words, to Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf, this was just a training session to hone themselves. Hundreds of breaths passed. Qin Feiyang and the others had walked about half a mile or so. This speed was already their limit. Compared to yesterday, Qin Feiyang's walking speed could be said to be extremely fast. After all, yesterday, they had spent an hour and only walked a dozen meters. And as they continued to go deeper, Qin Feiyang felt that the gravity began to gradually increase. Because the deeper they went, the greater the gravity, and the endurance of his physical body would gradually weaken. And after hundreds of breaths, the black shadow in front of them had not changed at all. It could be seen that the black shadow was quite far away from their current position. Heaven bless us. Please don't encounter another storm. Yin Zhongtian muttered. For them, the gravity was only secondary, and the threat of the storm was the greatest. Time passed slowly. After an hour, the black shadow finally enlarged a little, and they could already roughly see an outline, like a black stone tablet, quietly standing in the depths of the desert. Yin Zhongtian said excitedly, Brother Qin, could this be the appearance of some treasure? Treasure? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. It's possible, because there are many treasures in the heavy region, and they are all buried under the desert. If you don't know in advance, even if you pass by above, you won't find out. This old man speculates that the two storms yesterday must have swept away the sand and dust here, allowing the buried treasures to see the light again. The black-bearded old man analyzed, and there was a trace of excitement in his eyes. Hearing the words of Yin Zhongtian and the black-bearded old man, the other 11 people could not help but be excited. They had been exploring and searching for treasures in the heavy region all year round, and although they knew nothing about the inner and core regions, they more or less knew a little about the situation in the central region. Once a treasure appeared in the central region, it would definitely be a legendary and supreme-grade heaven-defying divine object. For Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian, heaven-defying divine objects were no longer that attractive, but for the black-bearded old man and the others, It was definitely a divine object worth fighting for. Chapter 35-31. Qin Feiyang looked at Yun Zhongtian and the others and said with a smile, "I'd rather it be a place of inheritance of the power of laws." A place of inheritance of the power of laws? The group of people looked at each other when they heard this, and they couldn't help but smile bitterly. Who wouldn't want such a good thing? But was it possible? So far, no one had found a place of inheritance of the power of laws in the central region. Yun Zhongtian asked, "Brother Qin, you have been to the inner region of the Yin demon land. Is there any inheritance of the power of laws in the inner region?" When the black-bearded old man and the others heard this, they couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang. "Yes, and there are also inheritances of the strongest laws and supreme mysteries." Qin Feiyang nodded with a smile. The group of people's hearts trembled. There was actually an inheritance of the supreme mysteries. If they could get an inheritance, wouldn't they immediately be like a fish leaping through the dragon gate, soaring into the sky and stepping into the peak of the sky cloud realm? However, if you can't overcome the erosion of the Yin demon power and step into the inner region, you will die without a doubt. Qin Feiyang smiled. The implication was that although the inheritance was tempting, it was best not to go. The black-bearded old man said, "Then I'll take the liberty to ask, how did you enter the inner region?" Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said with a smile, "It's all thanks to Senior Brother Madman. Of course, it's fine for the white-eyed wolf to enter the inner region alone." Why? Everyone was suspicious. Because the white-eyed wolf can absorb the Yin demon power. As for Senior Brother Madman, he is even more powerful. Not only can he absorb it, but he can also isolate the Yin demon power. Qin Feiyang smiled. Absorb? Isolate? When the group heard this, they looked at each other. They never thought that the white-eyed wolf and Madman Mo would have such an ability. Let's not talk about isolation, let's talk about absorption. From ancient times until now, except for the beasts living in the Yin demon land, they had never heard of anyone who could absorb the Yin demon power. Especially in the inner region, even the beasts living in the Yin demon land couldn't withstand the Yin demon power in the inner region. At most in the central region, this group of people were indeed monsters. In the evening, the group of people walked like snails for about 70 to 80 miles, before they finally saw the true face of the black shadow in front of them. It was indeed a stone tablet. Its entire body was black, and it stood alone in the desert, emitting an ancient aura. The black-bearded old man looked at the dark sky and suggested, "Everyone is probably tired. Why don't we take a rest first, and continue our journey tomorrow morning?" Yun Zhongtian looked at the stone tablet deep within and nodded his head. "All right, we'll continue tomorrow." Although they could already see the stone tablet and estimated that it was only about 1,000 miles away from their current location, with their current speed, it would take them 10 days to half a month to cover the distance of 1,000 miles. This scene caused them to involuntarily recall an ancient saying, "Far away on the horizon, yet close at hand." The stone tablet was clearly right in front of him. If they were outside, this distance would only take a blink of an eye, but now it was as far away as the horizon, untouchable. It was a quiet night. The next day, the group of people set off again. They were like solitary travelers, silently walking in the desert. The third day, the fourth day, in the blink of an eye, half a month passed. The group of people traveled during the day and rested at night, before they finally came before the stone tablet. From afar, the stone tablet looked small, but upon closer inspection, the stone tablet was more than 100 feet tall, like a mountain. Standing at the foot of the stone tablet, one could not help but feel small and insignificant. Yun Zhongtian went forward warily and reached out his hand to touch the stone tablet. When his fingertips touched the stone tablet, a thick and boundless aura suddenly surged towards Yun Zhongtian like a tidal wave. Although Yun Zhongtian had already mentally prepared himself, he was still pushed back by that surge of aura. When Qin Feiyang and the others saw the situation, they quickly went forward and asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Yun Zhongtian steadied himself and shook his head, saying, "I'm fine." After saying that, He raised his head to look at the stone tablet and said with a frown, "But this stone tablet is not as simple as it seems. If I'm not wrong, it should be a supreme-level heaven-defying artifact." Hearing that, the eyes of the black-bearded old man and the others lit up. A trace of disappointment crept up on Qin Feiyang's face. If it was just a heaven-defying artifact, then it was not that interesting. However, he still raised his head to look at the stone tablet. Although the stone tablet was very tall, there was not a single word or image on it, just like a flat mirror. When he went around the stone tablet and looked at the other side of the stone tablet, his gaze suddenly trembled. "What is it?" Yun Zhongtian and the others noticed Qin Feiyang's abnormality, and they all walked over to Qin Feiyang's side. When they raised their heads to look, their bodies also trembled violently. On the other side of the stone tablet, there were 3 bloody words engraved on it. God-slaying tablet. Every stroke, every drawing, seemed to be condensed from fresh blood, exuding a great murderous aura. God-slaying tablet. This must be a supreme-level heaven-defying artifact. The black-bearded old man and the others clenched their hands tightly, their eyes filled with desire. To them who had not grasped the highest profound meaning, a supreme-level heaven-defying artifact was no less than a trump card. However, they did not try to snatch it, because in front of Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian, they did not have the guts to do so. Yun Zhongtian glanced at the black-bearded old man and the others as he transmitted his voice to them. "Brother Qin, according to this old man's observations, this god-slaying tablet is no ordinary supreme-level heaven-defying artifact." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was originally lacking in interest, but hearing Yun Zhongtian's words, he could not help but feel a little more interested. Yun Zhongtian said to himself, "When I touched the stone tablet earlier, I could feel the aura of the stone tablet surpassing that of a supreme-level heaven-defying artifact." Surpassing? Qin Feiyang was taken aback, and with a trace of surprise, he walked over to the stone tablet and raised his arm, slowly approaching the god-slaying tablet. When his fingertips came into contact with the surface of the tablet, he could feel a boundless aura surging towards him. At that moment, his entire being was sent flying backwards. But at the same time, his eyes could not help but flash with a glint towards a supreme-level heaven-defying artifact. It could be said that his understanding was no less than Yun Zhongtian's, because he had seen far too many supreme-level heaven-defying artifacts. Now heaven-defying artifacts like the axe and the sunset divine bow had all evolved to the supreme level, so he knew all about artifacts of this level like the back of his hand. In that instant earlier, he could acutely determine that the aura of this god-slaying tablet was not just a little stronger than any ordinary supreme-level heaven-defying artifact, but was a whole lot stronger. In fact, he did not know if it was an illusion, but he could faintly feel that there was a faint aura of a sovereign divine weapon. Could it be that this was a heaven-defying divine weapon that was evolving into a sovereign divine weapon? The black-bearded old man laughed hoarsely. "Brother Qin, you even have a sovereign divine weapon, so a heaven-defying divine weapon is nothing to you. Why don't you just let us have it?" "That's right. A heaven-defying divine weapon is not of much value to you even if you have it, but it's different in our hands. And along the way, we have worked hard and helped you quite a bit." The others all opened their mouths and laughed. Hearing that, Qin Feiyang could not help but look at Yun Zhongtian. Yun Zhongtian said with a voice transmission, "This old man feels that we cannot just let them have the god-slaying tablet." Qin Feiyang thought to himself, "To be honest, I do not want to let them have it either, because this stone tablet could very well be a heaven-defying divine weapon that is about to evolve into a sovereign divine weapon. All the more we cannot let them have it." Hearing that, Yun Zhongtian immediately said with a voice transmission, now that they were facing the dragons, what they lacked the most was a sovereign divine weapon. An additional sovereign divine weapon was equivalent to an additional chance of victory. How could such a divine object be given to others? Seeing Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian exchanging glances, it was obvious that they were secretly discussing something. The black-bearded old man and the others looked at each other, and their brows furrowed together. "Everyone, from the looks of it, they do not intend to let us have it." A middle-aged man said with a voice transmission. Then what do we do? Do we have to shed all pretense of cordiality and fight with them for it? Another middle-aged man asked secretly. One is the infamous Qin Feiyang, and the other is the renowned Yin Zhongtian. How can we afford to offend them? Moreover, although there are only two of them, but if they really come to blows, we are no match for them. After all, both of them have mastered the highest level of profoundness. Then are we just going to let it go like this? It was not easy for us to come across a sovereign-grade heaven-defying divine weapon, and according to my observations, this God-slaughtering tablet is no ordinary sovereign-grade heaven-defying divine weapon. Why don't we launch a sneak attack? Anyway, Qin Feiyang has already left the sovereign divine weapon to the white-eyed wolf. As long as we are a little more nimble, the chances of a successful sneak attack is still very high. Yin Zhongtian should have a sovereign divine weapon as well. Impossible. The temple's sovereign divine weapon does not belong to Yin Zhongtian alone. There is also the old master of the He family. He has no way of controlling it. Moreover, if the temple's sovereign divine weapon is really with Yin Zhongtian, then more than half a month ago, when we encountered the storm, he should have already taken it out. The group of people were also plotting in secret, their killing intent rising. The entire scene fell into a dead silence. Yin Zhongtian swept his gaze over the group of people, and his eyes flashed as he transmitted his voice. Brother Qin, these people should be plotting in secret as well. If it is inconvenient for you to speak, then let this old man do it. They are indeed plotting in secret, because I can already feel a trace of killing intent. Qin Feiyang said to himself. Is there? Yin Zhongtian was taken aback as he asked suspiciously. Why didn't I feel it? Because of the slaughter domain, my perception towards killing intent is a little sharper than all of you. These people's killing intent is not very strong, and they are very hesitant. It is obvious that they are wary of us. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice to him. So that's how it is. Yin Zhongtian was enlightened as he sighed to himself. Indeed, in the various restricted lands, the greatest danger is the human heart. I hope they do not do that, because I still have a rather good impression of them. And along the way, they have indeed helped me and the white-eyed wolf quite a bit. Qin Feiyang said to himself. Yin Zhongtian was silent for a while before he turned his head to look at the black-bearded old man and the group of people, and said with a smile. Everyone, this old man has taken a liking to this god-slaying monument, and I hope that you can give it to this old man. Of course, it has not been easy for us to come this far, and this old man is willing to use other divine artifacts as compensation for all of you. To Yin Zhongtian, this was already being rather courteous, because with his power and status, would he still need to seek the approval of others for anything he wanted? He could just snatch it from them. Chapter 35-32. Hearing Yin Zhongtian's words, the black-bearded old man and the others looked at each other. If he was really going to compensate them, then at least it would not be a loss. Yin Zhongtian waved his hand, and a black spear appeared. It was about 3 meters long, and its entire body shone with a divine light, exuding a great divine aura. He smiled and said, This is also a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact, and this old man will give it to you as compensation. This. The group of people stared at the black spear in a daze. They had thought that Yin Zhongtian would give them a legendary heaven-defying divine artifact or something else, but they had never thought that he would give them a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact of the same value. The black spear was a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact, and the god-slaying monument was also a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. There was no need to exchange it, right? Could it be that this god-slaying monument was really not just any supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact? Will that do? Yin Zhongtian asked. The black-bearded old man waved his hand and said, This is just too valuable. How could we be so shameless as to take your supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact? It's fine. Yin Zhongtian smiled and decisively wiped off the blood contract before handing it over to the black-bearded old man. This? The black-bearded old man hesitated a moment before he said with a hoarse laugh, Since Elder Yun is so kind to send us off, then we won't stand on ceremony. Immediately after saying that, he took the black spear. Yin Zhongtian smiled and turned to walk over to the god-slaying monument, ready to drip his blood to claim ownership. Asterisk boom. Asterisk just at that moment, not too far away, a powerful aura stirred up a cloud of sand and dust. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk following closely behind. More than 10 divine artifacts charged out from under the desert, bringing with them a sharp glint that could tear the heavens and earth apart as they charged towards Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian were shocked, thinking that it was the black-bearded old man and the others who were ambushing them. But when they turned their heads to look, they realized that there were people lying in ambush here beforehand. At the same time, the black-bearded old man and the others were stunned as well, and when they saw the dozens of divine artifacts, their eyes narrowed. They were all supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifacts. Retreat! Coming back to his senses, the black-bearded old man shouted, and the 12 of them immediately retreated. Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian's eyes to look at each other. You really don't know death. Didn't he see who the target of the sneak attack was? Boom! With a wave of Yin Zhongtian's hand, destruction laws rolled out, and a gigantic statue of a deity appeared out of thin air. It was the highest level of destruction laws, the god of destruction. The god of destruction was like a demon king. His palm contained the power to destroy the heavens and earth. With a series of cracking sounds, the dozen divine artifacts shattered, and fragments flew everywhere. This is the destructive power of the profound meanings. When the black-bearded old man and the others saw this scene, their eyes were filled with shock. Fortunately, they had suppressed the greed in their hearts before this, or just Yin Zhongtian alone would have been able to kill them all in an instant. Who is it? Get the hell out here. Yin Zhongtian's gaze swept towards the desert, and he shouted out. So it's Senior Yin. I'm really sorry. I didn't know it was you. If I had known, I definitely wouldn't have dared to do anything. Accompanied by an apologetic laugh, 15 people walked out of the desert. There were men and women, young and old. Without exception, they were all perfect sovereigns. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man dressed in white, about 40 years old. He was 7 feet tall, and had a gentle smile on his face. The moment these people appeared, they waved their hands, and the dozen or so broken divine artifacts disappeared into their bodies. Yin Zhongtian swept his gaze over them one by one, and finally looked at the middle-aged man in white. He asked suspiciously, You are? I am Ma Zheng. Just a nobody, said Yifutian. The middle-aged man in white cupped his hands and smiled. Yin Zhongtian sneered. A nobody dares to sneak up on me? The middle-aged man in white smiled awkwardly and said, Didn't I just say it? We didn't recognize you. If we have offended you, I hope Senior can forgive us. Yin Zhongtian frowned. He really didn't dare to believe such nonsense. He asked, Then when did you all arrive? Not long ago. We have always been wandering in the central region. A few days ago, we saw this stone tablet from afar, and came over to take a look out of curiosity. Just a while ago, when we rushed over, we found that there was already someone in front of the stone tablet, so we quietly sneaked over. We didn't expect it to be you. Ma Zheng smiled. Yin Zhongtian looked at Ma Zheng, not saying a word. Ma Zheng had a magnanimous look on his face as he looked at Qin Feiyang at the side and cupped his hands, saying, I believe this brother must be the famous Qin Feiyang. That is me. Qin Feiyang nodded. Seeing Qin Feiyang nod his head in acceptance, the eyes of the dozen or so people beside Ma Zheng shrank slightly. In the current sky cloud realm, you could be anyone but Yin Zhongtian, but you would never not know the name Qin Feiyang. Ma Zheng sized up Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Nice to meet you. I didn't expect that not only would I meet Senior Yin, I would also meet Brother Qin. I also didn't expect that there would be so many people in the central region. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I'm ashamed. Although we have been wandering in the central region, we haven't even found a decent divine artifact. We have been wasting our time. Ma Zheng waved his hand. The black-bearded old man walked to Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian's side, looking at Ma Zheng and said, Ma Zheng, Don't be modest. Look at you now. Each of you has a supreme divine artifact. Isn't this harvest enough? Ma Zheng was taken aback, looking at the black-bearded old man and said with a smile, "You're here too." The black-bearded old man's face darkened. Had he been treating him like air? You know him? Qin Feiyang asked inwardly. Yes. The black-bearded old man nodded and transmitted his voice. Brother Qin, Senior Yin, you have to be careful. Don't be fooled by his polite appearance on the surface. In fact, his heart is very dark. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was curious. Most people who wander in the heavy region know this person's character. Burning, killing, robbing, bullying the weak, he can be said to be a despicable villain. No, a despicable villain. And he has an older brother called Ma Shan. It is said that he has already mastered a supreme profound. The two brothers are the same. When they run out of elixirs, they will rob. When they run out of resources, they will also rob. When they encounter a divine artifact, needless to say, they will not give up until they get it. In any case, in order to achieve their goal, they will do anything. But it is also because of this that many people want to follow them and take advantage of them. Just like the 14 people around Ma Zheng now, they all follow the Ma brothers. The black-bearded old man secretly explained. Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian looked at each other when they heard this. They were almost confused by Ma Zheng's appearance. Wait! Suddenly, the black-bearded old man looked at Ma Zheng and the others and frowned. Where is Ma Shan? Why don't I see him? The two brothers have always been inseparable. Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian couldn't help but look at Ma Zheng and the others. Boom! Just at this moment, the sand and dust beneath their feet churned, and a black figure leapt out, holding a dagger in both hands. It shone with a ghostly light, like two venomous snakes, heading straight for Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian's chi sees. This scene was too sudden. Not knowing that Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian, even the black-bearded old man, and the others would never have thought that someone would be able to sneak up to them without them knowing. Yin Zhongtian could not react in time, and the dagger sank into his lower abdomen, blood flowing freely. But Qin Feiyang, in that critical moment, leaned his body slightly, and when the dagger sank into his body, it just brushed past his chi sees. He looked at Yin Zhongtian, and his face darkened. Grabbing Yin Zhongtian by the shoulder, he quickly retreated. The wound on his lower abdomen was bleeding profusely. Haha. Ma Zheng on the opposite side immediately laughed out loud. The other 14 people looked at Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian, their faces full of mockery. But the person who had ambushed Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian lowered his head and looked at the blood on the dagger, his eyes full of shock. This person was about 1 meter and 70 centimeters tall, emaciated and skinny, with a head full of long black hair. His long and narrow eyes were like a pair of venomous snake's eyes, filled with a sinister glint. This blood is actually purplish gold. This person was Ma Shan. He looked at the purplish gold dragon blood on the dagger, and his face slowly showed a trace of surprise. Not only was it purplish gold blood, it even carried an extremely pure dragon's might. Ma Shan, this has nothing to do with us. Don't kill us. The black-bearded old man came back to his senses and immediately retreated to the side of the burly man, and the others like he was running for his life. It was not just the black-bearded old man, but the burly man and the others were also looking at Ma Shan in horror. Ma Shan raised his head and looked at the black-bearded old man and the others, his eyes full of disdain before his gaze turned to fall upon Qin Feiyang. Big brother, beautifully done. Ma Zheng walked to Ma Shan's side and laughed heartily. With a wave of his hand, his 14 subordinates immediately stepped forward and surrounded Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. Ma Shan's gaze finally fell on the wound on Qin Feiyang's lower abdomen and frowned. Are you a transformation of the divine dragon? Ma Zheng and the others heard this and looked at Ma Shan suspiciously. A transformation of the divine dragon? What did he mean? Look at his wound, Ma Shan said. Ma Zheng and the others immediately looked at Qin Feiyang's wound, and they were immediately dumbfounded. They did not notice before that this person's blood was purplish gold in color. The strangest thing was that it carried a dragon's might. No wonder Ma Shan asked if he was a transformation of the divine dragon. Qin Feiyang scanned the group of people and chuckled. I don't know if I'm a transformation of the divine dragon, but I know that you're in trouble. Imminent disaster? Your qi has already been destroyed, and you still dare to talk nonsense. Ma Zheng threw his head back and laughed. That's right. The famous Qin Feiyang and the temple's deputy temple master Yun Zhongtian. I thought you guys were powerful, but it turns out that you're all idiots. After we kill all of you, we brothers will be able to make a name for ourselves. The others also laughed and laughed. They thought that Qin Feiyang's qi had been destroyed. Not only them. Even Ma Shan and Yun Zhongtian, who sneaked up on Qin Feiyang, thought that Qin Feiyang's qi had been destroyed. Because the saber had indeed penetrated Qin Feiyang's lower abdomen, and it was still bleeding. Chapter 35-33. Kill us to make a name for yourself? Hearing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. You still dare to laugh? You really don't know what death is. Kill him for me. Ma Zheng's killing intent surged violently. As he waved his hand, the 14 people surrounding Qin Feiyang, and Ma Zheng immediately pounced towards Qin Feiyang with ominous glints in their eyes. Brother Qin. Yun Zhongtian was burning with anxiety, but more than that he was angry. He was the deputy temple master of the temple, an overlord of the sky cloud boundary. But he was schemed against by a group of clowns. It was a disgrace to him. Elder Yin, don't panic. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and glanced at the 14 people. He looked at Ma Zheng and said sarcastically, You're the ones who don't know what death is. Boom. As his voice fell, a terrifying karma power surged out like a volcanic eruption. Caught off guard, the 14 people flew out on the spot and spat out blood. What? Ma Zheng's face changed. Ma Shan, the black-bearded old man, and the others, including Yun Zhongtian, looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. His sea of qi didn't shatter? That's impossible. The previous blade had clearly hit his lower abdomen. A group of clowns, how dare you jump in front of me? Who gave you the courage? Qin Feiyang waved his hand and 10 golden lotuses appeared instantly. They carried a destructive aura and blasted towards the 10 people. Fight back! Ma Zheng roared. The 10 people quivered and activated their fifth law ultimacy and blasted towards the golden lotuses. Boom! Following a series of loud sounds, a strong wind blew and sand filled the sky. There was no suspense. The 10 golden lotuses were completely unstoppable. The 10 people's law ultimacy was instantly annihilated. Then, the 10 golden lotuses blasted their bodies and a terrifying aura erupted, drowning them in an instant. Ah! Cries of agony resounded through the sky. Under Ma Zheng's incredulous gaze, the 10 people's bodies were swallowed up by the karma power bit by bit. In the end, it was as if they had evaporated into thin air. Not even a strand of hair was left. So strong. The eyes of the black-bearded old man and the others trembled. Even if there was a difference of a small realm between them, he could still kill them instantly. The lethality of supreme laws of nature's supreme profundities truly lived up to its reputation. The remaining 4 people were also sent flying by the shockwaves of the battle. Blood gushed out of their mouths, and their faces were filled with fear. They looked at Qin Feiyang, as if they were looking at a demon. Run! In an instant. This thought appeared in the minds of the 4 of them at the same time. Then they turned around and started running for their lives without looking back. Although they were all perfect sovereigns, due to the pressure of gravity, it was as if they were jogging. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with mockery. In an instant, he flicked his finger and several blood-red rays of light tore through the air. Kill formula. The blood-colored light carried a monstrous killing intent. With a crisp crack, it shattered the back of the 4 people's skulls and entered their heads. The next moment, the heads of the 4 men exploded, their flesh and blood splattering everywhere. Soon after, the 4 of them fell into a pool of blood with a bang. The headless corpses were a ghastly sight. 14 perfect sovereigns were killed in an instant just like that. Ma Zheng's eyes trembled. The black-bearded old man and the others couldn't help but tremble. This was too strong. This was Qin Feiyang's true strength. Now even in the entire sky cloud realm, he was an existence that could move unhindered. Apart from the perfect sovereigns who also grasped supreme laws of nature, who else could be his opponent? Unbelievable. How many years had it been since his name shook the sky cloud realm? He had actually grown to this extent. Although they had never seen Qin Feiyang before, they had heard of Qin Feiyang's deeds long ago. When he first appeared in the eastern continent, his cultivation seemed to be at the undead realm. It was hard to imagine how he had not only cultivated to the perfect sovereigns, but also comprehended the supreme laws of karma in such a short time. Then they looked at Ma Shan. He didn't say a word the entire time. His glowing eyes stared at Qin Feiyang like a poisonous snake. Suddenly, he noticed that Qin Feiyang's body trembled slightly, and his face turned slightly pale. However, Qin Feiyang quickly covered it up. Seeing this scene, Ma Shan's eyes flashed with a sneer. At this time, Qin Feiyang also retracted his gaze and turned to look at Ma Zheng beside Ma Shan. He smiled and said, "How do you feel?" Ma Zheng's pupil shrank. He couldn't help but walk behind his big brother, Ma Shan, to find a sense of security. Qin Feiyang's ruthless methods had already made him unable to smile or be arrogant. Such an expert was simply not someone he could deal with. Qin Feiyang's gaze finally fell on Ma Shan. "Haha." Ma Shan suddenly smiled and said, "The rumors are true. With Brother Qin's strength and the sovereign divine weapon, you can completely dominate the sky cloud realm. This Ma Shan admires you. Then you dare to sneak attack us?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Life is all about gambling. If I could have successfully shattered your Qi Si, the benefits I would have gained would be unimaginable." Ma Shan said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "You are very honest, but this time you lost the bet." "Yes. I didn't expect your adaptability to be so strong. Under such circumstances, you could still keep your Qi Si." Ma Shan's face was full of admiration. But then he changed the topic. His eyes flashed with a gloomy light, and he said with a cruel smile, "The outcome is still unpredictable." Boom! Before his voice faded, waves of lightning power emerged. Suddenly wind whistled and thunder roared. "The law of lightning," Qin Feiyang muttered. "Not bad. Although the law of lightning is not as good as the law of karma, my cultivation is stronger than yours. If we fight to the death, the outcome is still unknown." Ma Shan roared and the eye of lightning appeared. Beams of apocalyptic divine light crazily rushed toward Qin Feiyang. "It seems you haven't truly understood the power of the law of lightning." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. 10 golden lotuses appeared, suppressing heaven and earth as they rushed forward. Rumble! The collision of the two ultimate profound meanings was deafening and thunderous. Puff! The moment the two laws of lightning collided, Qin Feiyang's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of purple gold dragon blood. His face also turned pale. "What's going on?" Ma Zheng, Yun Zhongtian, the black-bearded old man, and the others looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. He was clearly fine a moment ago. Why would he spit out blood all of a sudden? Logically speaking, even if Qin Feiyang's cultivation was a minor realm lower than Ma Shan's, it was impossible for him to lose. After all, Qin Feiyang had grasped the highest profundities of the strongest laws. "Haha." Ma Shan laughed heartily as he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "I've already noticed that you're a little weak. However, your acting skills are pretty good. You managed to fool everyone." "Weak?" Yun Zhongtian looked at Qin Feiyang and asked in a low voice, "Brother Qin, what's going on?" Qin Feiyang looked at Ma Shan and then at Yun Zhongtian and sighed, "I won't hide it from you. When I broke through the limits of my physical body, I suffered some internal injuries. Without hundreds or thousands of years, it will be difficult for me to recover." "This?" Yun Zhongtian was stunned and he said angrily, "Why didn't you say you had internal injuries earlier?" "I didn't want you to worry." Qin Feiyang sighed. Hearing this, Yun Zhongtian looked at Ma Shan and shouted, "You'd better stop before going too far." "Haha." Ma Shan laughed loudly. When Ma Zheng heard that Qin Feiyang had internal injuries, he was no longer afraid and became arrogant again. He walked out from behind Ma Shan and looked at Yun Zhongtian with a smile. "Old thing, you still don't understand this situation. Your Qi Si is crippled and Qin Feiyang has internal injuries. You're now an arrow at the end of its flight. How are you going to fight us? Yin Zhongtian clenched his fists. It was really as the saying went. When a tiger falls to the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. However, even if his qi was crippled, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Old Yin, don't be in a hurry to use the sovereign divine weapon. Qin Feiyang could feel Yin Zhongtian's killing intent and transmitted his voice to him. Yin Zhongtian was slightly taken aback and looked at Qin Feiyang in puzzlement. I have my own plans. You just have to watch, Qin Feiyang said secretly. He looked at Ma Shan and smiled faintly. Even if there are internal injuries, with the strength of you two brothers, you can forget about hurting us. Boom! The Karma Law's supreme profoundness was activated again. You still dare to be arrogant in front of us? Ma Zheng was so angry that he laughed. All the fifth profoundness were activated. Ma Shan's eyes flashed with a terrifying light. The lightning law's supreme profoundness, and the other fifth profoundness, that he had mastered instantly roared out. Let me see if your current strength is as good as that mouth of yours. Ma Shan smiled sinisterly. Then, he used all sorts of mysteries and magic abilities to attack Qin Feiyang with a ferocious aura. Ma Zheng smiled coldly when he saw this. His fifth profoundness madly attacked as well. Boom! The two profoundness of the laws collided with a loud bang. A destructive shockwave instantly swept out in all directions. At this moment, heaven and earth rumbled and dust covered the sky. Puff! Qin Feiyang's body trembled, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. He staggered back and his face became even paler. Haha! Ma Shan and his brother laughed even more wildly when they saw this. The black-bearded old man and the others looked at each other, and their hearts began to stir. From the looks of the situation, he really did have internal injuries. If that was the case, they would have a chance later. Die! The brothers roared, and all the profoundness of the laws blasted toward Qin Feiyang with monstrous killing intent. The thought of being able to kill this monstrous genius with their own hands made them very happy. Of course, what they wanted the most was Qin Feiyang's treasures. Qin Feiyang steadied himself and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the two and said indifferently, You really don't have the ability to kill me. My strength is at a level that you will never be able to reach. Boom! A destructive aura surged out of Qin Feiyang's body. Self-detonation. The Ma Shan brothers' expressions changed. The black-bearded old man and the others were also shocked. They immediately turned around and fled. No. Suddenly, the black-bearded old man frowned and stopped. He turned to look at Qin Feiyang. This destructive aura didn't seem to be self-detonation. Wait! He's not self-detonating. This is the power of destruction. Suddenly, the black-bearded old man's eyes trembled as he roared in disbelief. Chapter 35-34. The Power of Destruction. The 11 people next to the Ma Shan brothers and the black-bearded old man were stunned. Qin Feiyang had mastered the law of destruction? Not many people knew that Qin Feiyang had inherited the law of destruction. Moreover, people like the black-bearded old man had been wandering in the heavy regions all year round, so they did not know. So at this moment, when they saw Qin Feiyang activate the law of destruction, they were extremely surprised and shocked. Yes, the law of destruction. Qin Feiyang nodded. The fifth profound, the behemoth of destruction. Then, he activated the supreme profound of the law of karma again. Roar! Boom! The behemoth of destruction's roar shook the sky. 10 golden lotuses shone brightly, accompanied by an earth-shattering sound. The Ma Shan brothers' law of destruction immediately dissipated. Don't be afraid. His law of destruction does not have the supreme profound. It's just the fifth profound. At most, he will be invincible in the same realm. He can't overcome the gap of a small realm. Ma Shan hurriedly yelled when he saw the panic on Ma Zheng's face. Hearing this, Ma Zheng's spirit was lifted, and he once again charged toward Qin Feiyang. A bloody battle had begun. Qin Feiyang's weakness was becoming more and more obvious. The lethality of his law of destruction was also gradually weakening. He did this on purpose. As he said before, he had his own plans. Although Yin Zhongtian was puzzled, he did not ask much. At the same time, he worked hard to repair his qi. Time passed breath by breath. Seeing that he could not take down Qin Feiyang, Ma Zheng panicked again and said, "Big brother, we can't go on like this. When Yin Zhongtian's qi is repaired, we will be finished." In fact, Ma Shan was also upset at this moment. His opponent's aura was getting weaker and weaker. The lethality of his law of destruction was also weakening, but there was no way to kill him. Of course he knew, when Yin Zhongtian's qi was repaired, it would be a disaster for his brothers. Suddenly, Ma Shan looked at the black-bearded old man and shouted, "Old man, help me." The black-bearded old man looked at Ma Shan in surprise upon hearing this. He didn't think that Ma Shan would ask him for help. Qin Feiyang was also shocked. He hurriedly looked at the black-bearded old man and said, "Senior, we are friends who have gone through thick and thin together. It's okay if you don't help me now, but if you help brother Ma Shan, then you're not being honest." The black-bearded old man looked at Qin Feiyang again. The 11 people beside him also looked at Qin Feiyang and the Ma brothers with flickering eyes. "Old man, help me. We'll divide their interspatial rings. You must know what kind of people Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian are, and the treasures in their cosmos rings would definitely be more than you can imagine. I'm sure that as long as we can get the treasures on them, we'll definitely have a meteoric rise. At that time, we won't have to risk our lives in a place like the heavy region." Ma Shan tempted. The black-bearded old man heard this and looked at the 11 people beside him. "We definitely can't trust the Ma brothers, but we can join forces with them first. After we've severely injured Qin Feiyang, we can take the opportunity to sneak up on them," a burly man said. They had such an idea from the beginning, but due to the strength of Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian, they didn't dare to make a move. But now, Qin Feiyang had internal injuries, and the horsetail whisk had been given to the white-eyed wolf. Yin Zhongtian's qi was also crippled. As for the temple's sovereign divine weapon, it had not appeared until now, so it definitely wasn't with Yin Zhongtian. So, now was the perfect opportunity to do so. Yin Zhongtian looked at the black-bearded old man and his group and frowned slightly. He said in a deep voice, "We've already been very kind to you, and even gave you a supreme-grade divine weapon. Let's not talk about anything else, but at least, don't be ungrateful." Haha. As the deputy temple lord, how can you be so childish as to talk about being ungrateful? Don't you understand the ways of the world today? How laughably naive. The black-bearded old man immediately sneered as he pulled out a long black spear and charged towards Qin Feiyang. This long black spear was given to him by Yin Zhongtian before. When the other 11 saw the situation, their faces were filled with ridicule as they activated their mystic skills and brought out their heaven-defying divine weapons. Following the black-bearded old man, they charged towards Qin Feiyang in a mighty manner. Seeing this scene, Yin Zhongtian could not help but burn with rage. As expected, in this world, there were not many people who could be trusted. Suddenly, he seemed to understand Qin Feiyang's intention. Perhaps he was testing the black-bearded old man and his group. "Ha! Qin Feiyang, Yin Zhongtian, your end has come." Seeing this, Ma Shan and Ma Zheng laughed maniacally as they waited for the black-bearded old man and his group to come before they charged towards Qin Feiyang and his group. Sigh. Looking at the Ma Shan brothers, Qin Feiyang then turned to the black-bearded old man and his group and let out a long sigh of disappointment. Boom! The karma law and destruction law in his body surged out like a tide. "Don't make any more useless struggles." Ma Zheng sneered. "I really don't know how to describe your stupidity." Qin Feiyang shook his head. With a loud rumble, 10 golden lotuses appeared in the void. At the same time, a destruction god appeared in the sky, its destructive power flooding in all directions and shaking heaven and earth. "This is..." Ma Shan's expression froze. Then, his eyes were filled with fear that could not be dispelled. "It's too late for regrets now." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the two supreme mysteries descended like gods. The monstrous power caused the group to fall into the abyss of despair. This is the supreme mystery of the destruction law, the supreme mystery of the karma law, the supreme mystery of the destruction law. What kind of monster is this? Brother Qin, we were wrong. Don't kill us, please. We'll be your slaves in the future. Please give us a chance. Whether it was the Ma Shan brothers or the black-bearded old man, their previous arrogance instantly disappeared, leaving only fear in their hearts. Actually, Elder Yin was already giving you a chance before this. Because long before Ma Shan and the others appeared, I had already sensed your murderous intent. But along the way, you have indeed helped me and the white-eyed wolf a lot, especially when we were facing the storm. If we had helped you, the white-eyed wolf, and I might have been swept away by the storm. As a person, you must know how to repay kindness. Thus at that time, Elder Yin gave you that utmost exalted level heaven-defying divine artifact in order to eliminate your greed and killing intent. But I didn't expect that even if we made concessions, we still couldn't satisfy you. Tell me, what can I do? Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Yin Zhongtian suddenly understood. As expected, Qin Feiyang's weakness and internal injuries were all fake to test these people. When the black-bearded old man and the others heard this, it was too late for regrets. He clearly knew that this Qin Feiyang wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he should be content with obtaining a sovereign-level heaven-defying divine artifact. However, he still wanted to obtain more. Wasn't this just seeking his own death? If you dare to make a move now, it's because I gave my sovereign divine weapon to the white-eyed wolf. Moreover, you must have thought that the sovereign divine weapon of the temple is not with Elder Yin. So, as long as you join forces with the Ma Shan brothers, Elder Yin and I will be little lambs on your chopping board. Is that really the case? Elder Yin, take out your sovereign divine weapon and wake them up. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yin Zhongtian nodded and looked at the group of people with a disdainful smile. With a loud clang, the sword of Thanatos immediately swept out from his body, and a terrifying light immediately shrouded the group of people. Seeing the appearance of the sword of Thanatos, the group of people felt even more despair. It turned out that they were wrong from the beginning. In fact, they were also stupid. The heavy region was so dangerous. If he really only had one sovereign divine weapon, why would Qin Feiyang give the horsetail whisk to the white-eyed wolf? At this moment, there were only two words to describe them. They were filled with regret and despair. All right, it's time to send you on your way. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and two supreme profoundness blasted towards the group of people with the power to destroy the world. We can't just sit here and wait for death, the black-bearded old man roared. But before he could finish his words, with a loud clang, the black spear in his hand broke free and swept towards Yin Zhongtian. Bastard! The black-bearded old man roared. But at the same time, the two supreme profoundness struck. Accompanied by a series of screams, the group of people were buried in the desert one after another. Not even their bones were left. With the sword of Thanatos, the sovereign divine weapon, they did not even have the chance to self-destruct. Sigh! Yin Zhongtian sighed softly. People should not be too greedy. Because of greed, people would die. After a while, Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and turned to look at the black spear. He looked at Yin Zhongtian and said with a smile, "I'm sorry to have lied to you." Yin Zhongtian smiled bitterly. To be honest, when he heard that there was an internal injury, he was really shocked. However, when Qin Feiyang stopped him from taking out the sword of Thanatos, he thought that this matter should not be like what Qin Feiyang said. All right, everything is settled. It's time to collect this divine object. Qin Feiyang took out a divine life pill and swallowed it. He looked up at the god-slaying monument, his eyes full of anticipation. If it was really a heaven-defying divine weapon that was about to evolve into a sovereign divine weapon, then this trip to the heavy region would be a huge gain. Yin Zhongtian waved his hand and put away the sword of Thanatos and the black spear. He was also full of anticipation as he followed Qin Feiyang to the god-slaying monument. Brother Qin, why didn't Ma Shan's sneak attack hurt your qi? After taking a few steps, Yin Zhongtian looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and asked. When the dagger entered my lower abdomen, my body tilted a little, so the dagger brushed past my qi. Qin Feiyang smiled. Yin Zhongtian heard this and carefully recalled. He shook his head and smiled. Your instinctive reaction is a little scary. At that time he was also facing a sneak attack, so he really did not notice this detail. Moreover, in comparison, he felt that he, an old antique who had experienced hundreds of battles, was not as fast as a young man. You flatter me. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and walked to the bottom of the god-slaying monument. With a wave of his hand, a drop of purple gold dragon blood flew towards the god-slaying monument. Chapter 3, Release at 10. Chapter 35. Drip. When the purplish gold dragon blood landed on the god-slaying tablet, the anticipation in Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian's eyes grew even more intense. However, as time passed, the purplish gold dragon blood did not seep into the god-slaying tablet. Instead, it slowly flowed down until it finally dripped onto the sand below and was swallowed by the sand. What's going on? The two of them looked at the scene in shock. It could not be bound by blood? Could it be? The same thought appeared in both their minds at the same time. Did the god-slaying tablet have an owner? That was the only reason why the god-slaying tablet could not be bound by blood, since it already had an owner. Qin Feiyang immediately released his divine consciousness and shrouded the god-slaying tablet. When his divine consciousness entered the god-slaying tablet, he found that there was a blood contract. The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. After fighting for so long, it turned out to be an item with an owner. However, there was a problem. Since the god-slaying tablet had an owner, who was its owner? One had to know. This was the heavy region, and not the outside world. Moreover, this was a heaven-defying divine artifact that surpassed the honorable grade, and had hopes of evolving into a sovereign-grade divine weapon. Who would be willing to leave it here? Yin Zhongtian asked. All heaven-defying divine artifacts have weapon spirits. Why don't we ask the weapon spirits? All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Yin Zhongtian looked up at the god-slaying tablet and shouted, God-slaying tablet, can you hear me? There's something we'd like to consult you about. Time passed by bit. There was no sound from the god-slaying tablet. What's going on? Yin Zhongtian was taken aback and released his divine consciousness into the god-slaying tablet to search for the weapon spirits. However, there was no weapon spirit in the god-slaying tablet. It can't be. Such a powerful divine artifact did not have a weapon spirit? Impossible. Yin Zhongtian expanded his search area again. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Yin Zhongtian said, Look at the bottom of the god-slaying tablet. Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment. He released his soul consciousness again and poured it into the desert below the god-slaying monument. His eyes lit up immediately. Right below the god-slaying monument, within the black sand, there was a barrier the size of a wash basin. It emitted a weak light, and within the barrier, there was a blood-red shadow. Yin Zhongtian furrowed his brows and said, It should be the weapon spirit of the god-slaying tablet, but why is there no movement from it at all? One had to know. The fluctuations from the previous battle were so strong that it was impossible for the artifact spirit to not notice it. However, at that moment, the artifact spirit did not move in the slightest, even though it was being searched by their divine consciousness. Could it be asleep? But even if he was in a deep sleep, it was impossible for him to sleep so deeply. Qin Feiyang and Yang Kai stared at the artifact spirit in bewilderment. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment before he looked at Yin Zhongtian and said, No matter what it is doing, let's try and see if we can erase the blood pact within its body. All right. Yin Zhongtian nodded his head, and his divine consciousness surged into the god-slaying monument once again, surging towards the blood pact. Although his sea of qi had been destroyed, his soul was unharmed. So as long as the owner of the god-slaying monument was in the sovereign realm, Yin Zhongtian would be able to erase it. Very quickly, Yin Zhongtian's divine consciousness enveloped the blood pact. With a single thought, his divine consciousness surged forth and began to crush the blood pact. Unexpectedly, the blood pact was extremely weak before Yin Zhongtian's divine consciousness. In just a blink of an eye, the blood pact was crushed. This instead surprised Yin Zhongtian a little, because the way he saw it, the owner of the god-slaying monument should also be in the sovereign realm. After all, with the god-slaying monument being so strong, how could its owner be weak? Faced with a blood pact left behind by a sovereign realm, even Yun Zhongtian of the same cultivation level would need to expend quite a bit of effort. But he had never thought that the blood pact would be so weak. From the strength of the blood pact, the owner of the god-slaying monument was at most in the sovereign realm. What is it? Qin Feiyang looked at Yun Zhongtian suspiciously. Erasing the blood pact was a good thing. Why was there such a reaction? Yun Zhongtian told Qin Feiyang the doubts in his heart. When Qin Feiyang heard that, he too was surprised. Who would have thought that the owner of the god-slaying monument would be so weak? However, to them this was not important. What was important was that they had successfully erased the blood pact and taken it for themselves. Qin Feiyang dripped his blood pact once again, and this time, the pact was completed smoothly. Although Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and with a loud rumble, the god-slaying monument slowly rose from the ground, and the weapon spirit also slowly rose up with it. But even so, the weapon spirit showed no signs of awakening. This abnormal phenomenon made Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian even more suspicious. Even if it was a pig, it would not be able to sleep so deeply, right? However, what the two of them did not know was, in a sea of fire, magma surged and waves of fire covered the sky. A woman dressed in a fiery phoenix long dress sat in the midst of the flames with a serene expression. She was in her 20s, with sparkling skin and an exquisite figure. Her long eyelashes fluttered and her fiery red hair fluttered with the waves of fire, making her look like a heavenly maiden. Just as Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian were about to erase the blood pact, the woman's petite body frowned slightly, and she suddenly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of fiery eyes, and a trace of blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. And that blood was no ordinary blood. It was as if there were wisps of divine flames condensing, and within that blood, one could even see wisps of flames gathering. They actually found the god-slaying monument. The woman opened her eyes and suddenly stood up, her fiery eyes revealing a cold light. She then raised her hand, and an ancient stone door opened before her. In the central region, Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian were standing together at this moment, looking curiously at the god-slaying monument. The god-slaying monument had now become the size of a palm, and was suspended in front of the two of them. The weapon spirit was also floating beside the god-slaying monument. Hey, wake up. Qin Feiyang reached out his hand, and couldn't help but poke the boundary where the weapon spirit was. But the weapon spirit still had no reaction. What's going on? Qin Feiyang scratched his head. This was the first time he had seen such a special weapon spirit. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Yun Zhongtian reached out his hand and lowered his head to ponder for a moment. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Is there a possibility that the weapon spirit was severely injured and fell into a deep slumber?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He pondered for a moment and nodded. "That's a possibility." Clang! Just as he said that, there was a deafening sound from the sky above. Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian looked up suspiciously and saw a stone door opening quickly. Looking at the stone door, the two of them were stunned for a moment before their faces were filled with disbelief. That stone door was a time and space teleportation divine artifact. One must know, there were restrictions in the heavy region, and it was impossible to activate a time and space teleportation divine artifact. But now, a time and space teleportation divine artifact had appeared. How could they not be surprised? Brother Qin, be careful. Yun Zhongtian was alert. To be able to activate a time and space teleportation divine artifact in the heavy region, it was definitely not an ordinary person. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. He decisively kept the god-slaying tablet and the weapon spirit in his sea of qi and nurtured them, because he had thought of a possibility. The person who came could be the owner of the god-slaying tablet, because it couldn't be such a coincidence. They had just erased the blood pact of the god-slaying tablet, and someone had activated a time and space teleportation divine artifact to come to the heavy region. And it just so happened that the god-slaying tablet was in the sky. This already proved that even if the person who came was not the owner of the god-slaying tablet, He must be related to the god-slaying tablet. Under the gaze of the two, a woman in a fire phoenix long dress walked out from the stone door quickly. The two of them were stunned. Why was it a woman? At the same time, after the woman in the phoenix dress appeared, she looked down and immediately saw Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian. When she saw the two of them, the woman was stunned. It turned out that two unfamiliar humans had found the god-slaying tablet. It seemed, the woman in the phoenix dress also heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Yin looked at the woman and transmitted his voice. She's only a perfected dominator. Could she be the owner of the god-slaying tablet? It's possible. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. A perfected dominator was naturally nothing to worry about. But there was one thing that Qin Feiyang did not dare to ignore. How could this woman ignore the rules of the heavy region? Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. He thought of the Yin Demon Land. The dragons in the Yin Demon Land could also ignore the rules of the Yin Demon Land. Could it be that the woman in front of them was someone who lived in the core area of the heavy region? Where's the god-slaying tablet? The woman in the phoenix dress kept the stone door and landed in front of Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian. She was not affected by the gravity at all and asked with a cold expression. Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian were shocked. She was indeed here for the god-slaying tablet. God-slaying tablet? Qin Feiyang pretended to be stunned. He looked at the woman with suspicion and asked, "What god-slaying tablet?" The woman in the phoenix dress raised her eyebrows. Playing dumb in front of her, the air here was filled with the smell of blood, and there were remnants of a battle. Obviously, there had been a battle here before, and it should have been for the god-slaying tablet. "Miss, I really don't know what you're talking about. Look at it yourself. This is a barren desert. Where are we going to find the tablet?" Qin Feiyang pointed around and said innocently. The woman in the phoenix dress's mouth twitched. She pretended to be serious and said expressionlessly, "Don't force me to attack. One of you is injured, and the other has his chi destroyed. You are also being suppressed by gravity. If I attack, you will all die. Don't. Let's talk nicely. We really don't see any tablet. Miss, why can you activate the space-time teleportation divine artifact? Why can you fly in the air? Don't you feel the gravity?" Qin Feiyang's face was full of curiosity like a curious baby. Yin Zhongtian, who was beside him, could not help but want to laugh. The woman in the phoenix dress's face gradually darkened. She suddenly released her divine sense and shrouded Qin Feiyang. Obviously, she wanted to search Qin Feiyang's chi. "Hey!" Qin Feiyang bared his teeth and released his divine sense as well. It collided with the woman's divine sense. "It seems that you really want to force me to attack." The woman in the phoenix dress's face darkened. She stared at Qin Feiyang with a cold light in her eyes. Chapter 35-36. Qin Feiyang was not afraid at all. He looked at the lady and said, "Miss, you're a little unreasonable." Hearing this, the lady in phoenix could not help but laugh out of anger. Not only did he snatch her god-slaying tablet, he actually said that she was unreasonable. How could there be such a person in the world? Qin Feiyang said, "Even if I have the god-slaying tablet, how can you prove that it's yours?" The lady in phoenix said angrily, "If the god-slaying tablet is not mine, would I know about its existence? If it's not mine, would I know where it is and come here directly? You have a point. But the god-slaying tablet should be a divine artifact. Since it's a divine artifact, it should have an artifact spirit. If the god-slaying tablet is really yours, you can summon the artifact spirit now. If the artifact spirit agrees, it means that you're telling the truth. But if the artifact spirit doesn't agree, then please stop pestering me." Qin Feiyang said. "I'm pestering you?" The lady in phoenix was burning with anger. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "We're both reasonable people, right? I won't hide it from you. Yes, the god-slaying tablet is in my hands now. As long as you can awaken the artifact spirit, I'll believe you and return it to you immediately." "You." The lady in phoenix clenched her fists. She was so angry that she was about to explode. She said in a low voice, "The artifact spirit is in a deep sleep. How can I awaken it?" What does that have to do with me? I only look at the evidence. It can't be that just because you say it's yours, right? I could say that you're mine, but are you? Qin Feiyang chuckled. I'm yours? The lady in Phoenix was stunned. What did he mean? Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and said with a smile. Don't dwell on such small issues. No. Wait, let me think. The lady in Phoenix waved her hand and interrupted Qin Feiyang. She lowered her head and muttered. I could say that you're mine. But are you? Does that mean saying that I'm his woman? The phoenix-robed woman pondered over these words, and her cheeks immediately turned red. She raised her head and angrily glared at Qin Feiyang. She then shouted, You dare to tease me? Do I? Qin Feiyang expressed his helplessness. It was just a metaphor. Was there a need to be so serious? Bastard. The phoenix-robed woman's hair fluttered in the wind. A monstrous wave of fire burst out from her body and surged towards Qin Feiyang like a torrent. The law of fire? Qin Feiyang took a step forward, and the law of thunder appeared. He seemed to have transformed into a thunder god, controlling all the thunder in the world as he blasted towards the roaring wave of fire. With a loud bang, the power of the two laws shattered at the same time in the void. The power of lightning. Perfect sovereign. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. The phoenix-robed woman snorted coldly. Then a five-colored divine light spread out from her body. Her fiery red hair fluttered in the wind. She looked like a five-colored fairy dancing in the flames. Qin Feiyang was stunned. This five-colored divine light was formed by the law of karma. He did not expect this woman to have comprehended the law of karma. Boom! With a loud bang, a five-colored divine lotus appeared in front of the phoenix-robed woman, exuding a mighty divine power. The fifth profound, Qin Feiyang murmured. The phoenix-robed woman shouted, I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to hand over the god-slaying tablet? I snatched the god-slaying tablet with my own strength. Why should I hand it over? If you really have the ability, then snatch it from me. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Pay the price for your arrogance. The phoenix-robed woman's eyes turned cold. The five-colored divine lotus immediately shattered the sky and pressed down on Qin Feiyang. The god-slaying tablet must not fall into the hands of others. Hey! Qin Feiyang bared his teeth. As he waved his hand, a five-colored divine lotus suddenly appeared in the sky, carrying a dazzling divine light. It rushed into the sky and clashed with the phoenix-robed woman's five-colored divine lotus. The two divine lotuses exploded in the sky like gorgeous fireworks, dazzling and dazzling. The phoenix-robed woman raised her eyebrows. He had also mastered the law of karma. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, The law of karma is not unique. Do you have to be so surprised? Indeed. The phoenix-robed woman nodded and sized up Qin Feiyang. But you seem to be very confident. You seem to have the confidence to defeat me. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The phoenix-robed woman was surprised by this answer. Without a doubt, I'm definitely stronger than you. However, you're in a better position now because you're not bound by gravity. In other words, you have the advantage. So, I'm not very confident that I can defeat you. Qin Feiyang smiled. The phoenix-robed woman's mouth twitched and said, You really don't know how to be humble. Are all humans so arrogant? Human? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. That was a key word. Could it be that this woman wasn't human? However, he didn't sense any other aura from her body. Huff. The phoenix-robed woman took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyang calmly. Whether you have the confidence or not, you must hand over the god-slaying tablet today. Boom! Accompanied by a terrifying aura, a black force spread out from her body. This force carried a terrifying devouring force. The surrounding void collapsed crazily and was devoured by the black force. This is... Yun Zhongtian's pupils contracted and he said in a deep voice, This is the law of devour. The law of devour, Qin Feiyang murmured. What was the origin of this woman? She actually mastered two of the strongest laws. One must know. In today's sky cloud realm, there was no fourth person who mastered two of the strongest laws except for himself, the mad scientist, and the white-eyed wolf. Even a giant like Elder Hua only mastered one of the strongest laws. Moreover, Even among the princes and princesses of the dragons, he hadn't found anyone who mastered 2 of the strongest laws. Thus, it could be seen, this woman's origin was definitely not small. Her talent was also extremely terrifying. Yin Zhongtian transmitted his voice. Brother Qin, maybe this woman is the person you are looking for. Don't go too far. Qin Feiyang secretly said. You are also beginning to suspect that she is someone who lives in the core area of the land of heavy domains. This old man believes that only those who live in the core area can ignore the rules of the land of heavy domains. Yin Zhongtian nodded. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he nodded. I know what to do. You take a step back first. All right. Yin Zhongtian replied, and then turned around to walk quickly towards the back. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the woman in phoenix robes and smiled. This is a dispute between you and me, so please don't take your anger out on others. The woman in phoenix robes glanced at Yin Zhongtian and said, Don't worry. Although I hate you, I won't bully an old man who has lost his cultivation. With your words, I am relieved. Bring out your full strength. Let me see how strong you are. Qin Feiyang's body shook. The law of karma, law of slaughter, law of thunder, and law of war were all activated in an instant. The power of the 4 great laws roared in the void, and the divine might shook all directions. Chapter 35-37. Only 4 types of laws? The lady in the phoenix robe was taken aback and frowned. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, That depends on whether you have the ability to make me activate the 5th type of law. Arrogant. The lady in the phoenix robe was furious. The black power suddenly became violent and emitted an unparalleled devouring force. It even formed a giant whirlpool. Not only the surrounding void, but even the power of law around Qin Feiyang was being devoured by the whirlpool. Brother Qin, this devouring law can devour all the power of law and turn it into the source of one's own power. It is a terrifying ability, be careful. Yin Zhongtian secretly reminded. So powerful? Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. The power of the 4 great laws instantly turned into a torrent, annihilating the sky and rushing towards the lady in the phoenix robe. The lady in the phoenix robe was expressionless as her fiery red hair danced in the wind. With a wave of her hand, the devouring power turned into a bloody mouth and swallowed the power of the 4 great laws. This is too heaven-defying. Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Although the power of the 4 great laws did not evolve into a profound divine ability, its lethality was not to be underestimated. But in the end, it was devoured by the devouring power just like that. In fact, the most shocking scene had yet to appear. After the devouring power swallowed Qin Feiyang's power of law, it transformed it into a part of the devouring power. Boom! Immediately, with a loud bang, a black divine seal roared out. It was thousands of feet long and covered the sky. This was the manifestation of the devouring power. The 5th profound devouring seal. The lady in the phoenix robe spoke with a ruthless indifference. The black divine seal was like a mountain that suppressed Qin Feiyang. Is this using my power to deal with me? Qin Feiyang frowned. It felt a little similar to the return formula. But the difference was that the return formula directly reflected the opponent's power. As for the devouring law, it transformed the power of other laws into devouring power. In other words, it was assimilated and then used as a means of attack. Qin Feiyang did not dare to be careless, because the devouring law was too strange. Furthermore, it was also his first time fighting against the devouring law, so he knew nothing about the devouring law. However, he did not activate his profound meaning. Just as Yin Zhongtian had said, if this woman was really the person he was looking for, then if he went overboard, it would not do him any good. After all, he was here to find allies. Along with a command in Qin Feiyang's mind, the 5-colored divine lotus soared into the world like a brilliant shooting star, and it collided with the seal of devour. Rumble! Heaven and earth trembled as the wind howled. When the woman in the phoenix robe saw this, she lightly waved her jade-like hand, and 5 types of law energy surged out. The law of devour, the law of karma, the law of fire, the law of light, and the law of darkness. The profound meanings of the 5 great laws were all activated in an instant, and a terrifying divine might shook the world. However, without a supreme profound, Qin Feiyang did not take it to heart. However, it was undeniable that the karma law and the devouring law, the 2 supreme laws, were extremely lethal. In the face of the bombardment of the 5 great profound, Qin Feiyang kept retreating, and his face was slightly pale. However, now that he had broken through the limits of his physical body, his physical body's endurance was far greater than before. Hundreds of rounds passed. Although Qin Feiyang held back his strength, and although the woman in the phoenix robe was fierce, she did not cause any actual harm to Qin Feiyang. So difficult to deal with. Looking at Qin Feiyang, who was at ease, the woman in the phoenix robe could not help but frown. Qin Feiyang smiled, and with a wave of his hand, the sand in the sky dissipated. He looked up at the woman in the phoenix robe and said, "So, this is your full strength?" When the woman in the phoenix robe heard this, a flame of anger rose in her heart. Was he looking down on her? 2 supreme laws. In the younger generation, it is indeed very powerful. There are not many who can fight with you, but unfortunately, your opponent this time is me. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, the karma law surged, and 10 golden lotuses appeared, illuminating the sky with divine light. What? The woman in the phoenix robe was dumbfounded. For someone who had mastered the karma law, she naturally understood the karma law's supreme profound. She never expected this human to have mastered the supreme profound. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, "Now you should know that I have been showing mercy to you." The woman in the phoenix robe was silent. If the other party had activated the supreme profound right from the start, she would have had no chance of winning. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the 10 golden lotuses broke through the sky, locking onto the woman in the phoenix robe with their aura. The woman in the phoenix robe could not help but panic. However, just as the 10 golden lotuses arrived in front of the woman in the phoenix robe, they suddenly stopped. The woman in the phoenix robe was slightly stunned, and could not help but look at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang waved his hand again, and the 10 golden lotuses immediately dissipated in front of the woman. This made the woman in the phoenix robe even more puzzled. He could have killed her, so why didn't he do so? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Come down, let's talk." He felt that his smile was very friendly. Of course, it was indeed a very friendly smile. However, in the eyes of the woman in the phoenix robe, it was not the case. She felt that Qin Feiyang was mocking her. She did not go down. Instead, she stood in the void and looked down at Qin Feiyang, asking, "Who are you?" "Let me introduce myself. My name is Qin Feiyang. I come from the outside world." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Qin Feiyang?" The woman in the phoenix robe was stunned. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Apart from the dragons, the people from the other 3 forbidden areas should not know about me." "You know about the dragons?" the woman in the phoenix robe asked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. He was more and more certain that this woman lived in the core area of the land of heavy regions. Because from the answer of the woman in the phoenix robe, she knew about the dragons. The woman in the phoenix robe sized up Qin Feiyang. Suddenly, she saw the purple gold dragon blood left on Qin Feiyang's lower abdomen, and a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. Immediately after, she stepped in front of Qin Feiyang and looked at the purple gold dragon blood up close. Qin Feiyang looked at the woman in the phoenix robe silently. He found that when the woman in the phoenix robe looked at the purple gold dragon blood, there was a trace of shock on her face, but more disbelief. Seeing this, Yin Zhongtian also walked to Qin Feiyang's side and looked at the woman in the phoenix robe in surprise. "That's right. This is the purple gold dragon blood. You are the purple gold dragon." After a long time, the woman in the phoenix robe looked up at Qin Feiyang and said in surprise, "No, I am a human, not a purple gold dragon." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Human?" The woman in the phoenix robe was stunned. "That's right. A real human." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Human purple gold dragon blood," the woman in the phoenix robe murmured. At the same time her eyes flashed. No one knew what she was thinking. Chapter 35-38. Qin Feiyang didn't disturb her. A lot of things could be seen from a person's expression. The woman in front of him didn't show any killing intent after knowing that he had the purple gold dragon blood. This showed that this woman didn't dislike the purple gold dragon blood. Maybe this was an ally he could make. But he also knew that he couldn't be too one-sided. What if the other party was hiding something? So before forming an alliance, he had to thoroughly understand the position of the heavy region. Without a doubt, this woman was the best target. A moment later, the woman in the phoenix robe shook her head and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that there would be a human with the purple gold dragon blood in this world." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and said, "It seems that you know a lot about the purple gold divine dragon? Don't try to trick me. I'm just a junior. I don't know anything about the purple gold divine dragon, let alone a human with the purple gold dragon blood." The woman in the phoenix robe said lightly. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. It seemed that this woman was not stupid, but on second thought, how could a person who could comprehend two kinds of profound meanings be a mediocre person? Since you've seen the dragons, it means that you've been to the dragon nest. What's the attitude of the dragons towards you? The woman in the phoenix robe looked at Qin Feiyang curiously. "I haven't seen the dragon nest, but the attitude of the dragons towards me." Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "To tell you the truth, I entered the heavy region to avoid the pursuit of the dragons." Hearing this, the woman in the phoenix robe wasn't surprised at all. She joked, "So you're here to seek protection?" Qin Feiyang asked, "Miss, do you think the heavy realm will lend me a helping hand?" "I'm not the one who can make the decision. How would I know? But you can try." There was a trace of inexplicable strangeness in the eyes of the woman in the phoenix robe. She didn't express any kindness or malice. Qin Feiyang frowned slightly. It seemed that it would not be easy to pry open this woman's mouth. Yin Zhongtian looked at the phoenix-robed lady and transmitted his voice over. "Brother Qin, why don't we just take her down and read her memories?" Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. This was not a bad idea. However, what if he read her memories forcefully and angered her? If the heavy realm and the dragons were against each other, and he offended the heavy realm and caused them to change their stance, then the loss would outweigh the gain. The phoenix-robed woman said, "How about this? Return the god-slaying tablet to me, and I'll take you to the core area." Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and asked, "Really?" "Of course. You already know the situation in the heavy realm, right? Without my help, it would be difficult to enter the inner region, let alone the core region. I think this is a good deal for you." The phoenix-robed woman revealed a smile. It was as if an iceberg had melted, and it was extremely charming. Qin Feiyang looked at Yin Zhongtian and transmitted his voice over. "Old Yun, what do you think?" Yin Zhongtian smiled bitterly, thinking to himself, "This old man does not dare to express his opinion on this matter." If they entered the core area and found that the heavy realm's stance was not what they imagined, then it would be like a lamb entering the tiger's den, and he could not bear the responsibility. Therefore, it was up to Qin Feiyang to make the decision. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while. A bright light flashed in his eyes as he looked at the phoenix-robed woman and said with a smile, "How about this? I'll keep the god-slaying tablet for you first, and when we enter the core area, I'll return it to you." Compared to a divine artifact, figuring out the heavy realm's stance and successfully forming an alliance was more important. Hearing this, the phoenix-robed woman raised her eyebrows. It seemed that this human was not so easy to fool. Qin Feiyang smiled. "I don't like to beat around the bush. I just don't trust you. I will only give you the god-slaying tablet after ensuring my safety. Is there a need to do this? If I really want to harm you, even if the god-slaying tablet is in your hands, you won't be able to leave alive when we reach the core area." A cold light flashed in the phoenix-robed woman's eyes. "If that's the case, I don't dare to go. All right, let's part ways here." After saying that, Qin Feiyang pulled Yin Zhongtian along as he turned to leave. The phoenix-robed woman was stunned and quickly called out, "Wait, wait, wait." Qin Feiyang stopped and turned to look at the phoenix-robed woman, saying, "Don't say anything else. I'm going to the core area." "You're throwing a tantrum?" The phoenix-robed woman was furious and snorted coldly. Then you're going to go out like this? Aren't you afraid that the dragons will kill you? It's not that easy for the dragons to kill me, Qin Feiyang said indifferently. The phoenix-robed woman looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. How could he be so confident in the face of the dragons? We'll talk about it later. People will die sooner or later, it doesn't matter. Qin Feiyang shrugged and ignored the phoenix-robed woman. He turned around and pretended to leave. The phoenix-robed woman frowned. We're all humans so difficult to deal with, she said helplessly. All right, when we enter the core area, I can guarantee your safety, but you must also promise that you will return the god-slaying tablet to me. Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian looked at each other and turned to the phoenix-robed woman with a smile, saying, Words are no proof. Swear an oath is proof. Swear an oath is proof. Is there such a childish person? The phoenix-robed woman looked at him with disdain and nodded, saying, All right, I swear. Qin Feiyang quickly reached out to stop her, saying, Don't. It's not this kind of oath, it's another kind. Come, I'll teach you. Another kind? The phoenix-robed woman looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. It's like this. Qin Feiyang explained the method of the blood oath in detail. When the phoenix-robed woman heard this, she frowned and asked, Is there any difference between this and an ordinary oath? There is no difference. But I believe in this kind of oath because I feel at ease. Qin Feiyang smiled without batting an eyelid. The phoenix-robed woman looked at Qin Feiyang with disdain and followed Qin Feiyang's method to swear the blood oath. When the oath seal fell from the sky, the phoenix-robed woman immediately felt that something was wrong. How could an ordinary oath cause an anomaly to fall from the sky? There was definitely something wrong. Are you lying to me? The phoenix-robed woman looked at Qin Feiyang angrily. No, this is the oath. Qin Feiyang looked at her innocently. The phoenix-robed woman said angrily, Then how do you explain this anomaly? This is the oath seal. After swearing the blood oath, the oath seal will appear. Qin Feiyang explained. Oath seal? The phoenix-robed woman was puzzled and asked doubtfully, Then what is the use of the oath seal? The use of the oath seal. Qin Feiyang chuckled and looked at the phoenix-robed woman. The oath seal will fuse into your body. You should have felt it by now. Yes. The phoenix-robed woman nodded. The oath seal had indeed fused into her body and could not be removed from her body. The oath seal exists to prevent the oath from being broken. A sly look flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes and he smiled. In other words, if you break the oath seal will shatter in your body. Once the oath seal shatters, the wrath of the heavens will descend and blast you into pieces. To be more specific, both your soul and body will be destroyed. Yun Zhongtian added on, his face revealing the sly smile of an old fox. What? The phoenix-robed woman's face froze. Both her soul and body will be destroyed? Qin Feiyang smiled. Actually, you can understand with one sentence. The blood oath will come true. Bastard. The phoenix-robed woman was furious. The devour law and the karma law emerged and she threw a punch at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's face changed, and he quickly dodged the phoenix-robed woman's fist. He said angrily, Can you be reasonable? You are willing to do this. I didn't force you. But you didn't say that the wrath of the heavens would descend. The phoenix-robed woman shouted angrily. Are you stupid or am I stupid? If I told you, would you have made the blood oath? Or are you lying to me? Do you not intend to let me leave the core area alive? Qin Feiyang frowned. The phoenix-robed woman's face was cold. Qin Feiyang snorted. Ordinary oaths are indeed unreliable. Fortunately, I have foresight. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know how I died. You win. The phoenix-robed woman glared fiercely at Qin Feiyang. She did not expect to be tricked like this. It was really infuriating. However, would the blood oath really come true? Was he trying to scare her? At the same time, Yun Zhongtian looked at the phoenix-robed woman and said suspiciously, Brother Qin, this doesn't seem right. She just attacked you. Shouldn't the wrath of the heavens descend? No. The blood oath has a specific purpose. The oath she made before was to ensure my safety after entering the core area. In other words, the oath will only take effect after entering the core area. Qin Feiyang explained in a low voice. So it's like that. Yin Zhongtian suddenly understood. The phoenix-robed woman also heard this. She looked at Qin Feiyang and frowned. Then when I bring you out of the core area alive, will the oath disappear? This? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He shook his head and said, This I really don't know. Because in the past, whether it is a human or a sovereign weapon, they all made a blood oath to be loyal to me forever. What did you say? The phoenix-robed woman was shocked. This blood oath can even bind a sovereign weapon? That's right. Qin Feiyang nodded. When the phoenix-robed woman heard this, the anger in her heart became even stronger. But suddenly, she looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise and asked, Does that mean you still have a sovereign weapon? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded again. The phoenix-robed woman was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she immediately said, Where is it? Let me see. It's in the hands of one of my companions. It's still behind us. Qin Feiyang pointed at the desert behind them and said. The phoenix-robed woman looked at the desert and sneered. You're just fooling me. How can a mere oath bind a sovereign weapon? I'm really not fooling you. Back then, there was a sovereign weapon that violated the blood oath and was destroyed. If you don't believe me, you can try it when we enter the core area. Qin Feiyang laughed. The phoenix-robed woman's pupils shrank, but soon, a smile appeared on her face. When Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian saw the smile on the phoenix-robed woman's face, they couldn't help but feel uneasy. Chapter 35-39. The woman in the phoenix robe looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, You just said that the blood oath is targeted. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The woman in the phoenix robe smiled and said, In other words, no matter what you encounter in the core area, as long as I take you out of the core area alive, I won't be punished, right? Qin Feiyang's expression froze. Hearing this, he felt that he had overlooked a lot of details. The woman in the phoenix robe said again, Also, even if I don't take you to the core area now, I won't be punished, right? Qin Feiyang was stunned. The woman in the phoenix robe laughed and said, Okay, then you can find a way to go to the core area by yourself. At most, I'll accompany you. You. Qin Feiyang looked at the woman in the phoenix robe angrily. He didn't expect that he would be checkmated by this woman. It was his fault for being careless. When he made the blood oath, he should have thought more and expanded the scope. This way, this woman wouldn't be able to find these loopholes and flaws. Although you made the blood oath to only guarantee my safety in the core area, and let me leave alive, please understand the meaning of guarantee my safety. Qin Feiyang said angrily. At that time, he should have asked the woman in the phoenix robe to guarantee his safety in the entire region, and let him leave the region alive. This would be more useful. But now, if she only guaranteed his safety in the core area, then as long as he didn't enter the core area or leave the core area, even if he died in the hands of the woman in the phoenix robe, it wouldn't be counted as a violation of the blood oath, let alone the punishment of heaven. Careless, smart all his life, but stupid this time. It was also the woman in the phoenix robe's identity. The woman in the phoenix robe's identity was too terrifying. So he wanted to get this woman as soon as possible. So he neglected a lot of details, which put him in a very passive situation now. Qin Feiyang looked at the woman in the phoenix robe and said with a smile, Let's talk about it again. There's nothing to talk about. The woman in the phoenix robe waved her hand with a complacent look on her face. You want to fight with me? Why don't you look in the mirror? Do you have the ability? Qin Feiyang was helpless. This was the difference of a chess move. Yin Zhongtian transmitted his voiceover. Brother Qin, if it were up to this old man, I think we should just read her memories directly. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang stared at the woman in the phoenix robe, his eyes flashing. The phoenix-robed woman had a bad premonition in her heart when she saw this. She looked at Qin Feiyang with vigilance and asked, What do you want to do? Is there really no room for negotiation? Qin Feiyang asked. Of course. Why should I help you go to the core area when you're trying to trick me like this? If you have the ability, go by yourself. If you don't have the ability, then return the God-slaying tablet to me as soon as possible and scram. The phoenix-robed woman snorted coldly. Now you want to negotiate? How could there be such a good thing? As soon as she finished speaking, Qin Feiyang suddenly raised his arm and grabbed her arm. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he said, "You forced me to do this. What are you doing? Let go." The woman in phoenix clothes panicked and shouted, "Don't worry, I won't hurt you." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a puppet imprint appeared. It entered the top of the woman's head at lightning speed. When the puppet imprint entered the top of her head, the woman in phoenix clothes realized that something was wrong. This seemed to be a kind of control secret technique. This arrogant human, not only did he trick her with the blood oath, he also wanted to control her. This was intolerable. Boom! All of a sudden, a vast divine power rushed out of the woman in phoenix clothes consciousness and went straight for the puppet imprint. With a loud bang, the puppet imprint shattered on the spot. Qin Feiyang immediately suffered a backlash. His entire body spun around, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he retreated repeatedly, and his complexion turned ghastly pale. What's going on? Yin Zhongtian's face changed, and he hurried forward to support Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang remained silent. He sat cross-legged on the ground, and took out a divine sun elixir, and stuffed it into his mouth. The divine sun elixir was used to repair the spiritual soul. At this moment, his spiritual soul was suffering from a backlash, and was constantly cracking. A fatal sense of danger rose in his heart. Yin Zhongtian looked angrily at the lady in the phoenix robes, and his eyes narrowed immediately. He saw that the lady in the phoenix robes was covered with a fiery red divine flame from head to toe, just like a barrier, exuding a terrifying aura. What was more terrifying was that there seemed to be a fire phoenix dancing in the divine flame. "Why are you looking at me?" he asked for it. "Can't you speak properly? Why do you have to control me?" The woman in phoenix clothes snorted. Yin Zhongtian's eyes turned cold. This divine flame boundary was definitely not an ordinary item. However, no matter how strong it was, it could not be stronger than a sovereign weapon. He shouted, "Sword of the Grim Reaper." Along with a loud clanging sound, the death god's sword came out, and rushed towards the phoenix-robed woman in an earth-shattering manner. Sovereign weapon! The woman in phoenix clothes pupils shrank. That's right. Although Brother Qin's sovereign weapon is in the hands of Brother Wolf King, it does not mean that we do not have a sovereign weapon now. We are already being very courteous to you. If not for Brother Qin's benevolence, you would have been a corpse. Yin Zhongtian's eyes flashed with a strong murderous intent. The woman in phoenix clothes looked at the sword of the Grim Reaper in panic. She looked a little aggrieved. It was this bastard who tried to control me first. Why can't I fight back? She took out a divine sun elixir from her cosmos ring and handed it to Yin Zhongtian, saying, "Feed it to him." Yin Zhongtian did not pay much attention at first. Who did not have a divine sun elixir? But when he swept his gaze over it, he was stunned. There were 10 dragon-shaped elixir chi on it. 10 dragon-shaped elixir chi was something that even he, the overlord of the southern continent, had never seen before. The woman in phoenix clothes said, "If you don't feed it to him, don't blame me when his spiritual soul shatters." Yin Zhongtian quivered and hurriedly took the divine sun elixir. He turned and walked to Qin Feiyang's side and stuffed it into Qin Feiyang's mouth. Boundless energy suddenly exploded in Qin Feiyang's body. Like a torrent, it surged towards his spiritual soul. For a divine pill, even if it was just an extra dragon-shaped elixir chi, the effect was as different as heaven and earth. For a divine pill with 10 dragon-shaped elixir chi, it was already the best elixir in the sky cloud realm. Not to mention regenerating flesh and bones, or bringing the dead back to life, but healing injuries was a matter of minutes. Qin Feiyang's shattered spiritual soul quickly stabilized and recovered. 100 breaths passed. Qin Feiyang finally opened his eyes. His face was a lot rosier. Yin Zhongtian asked with concern, "Brother Qin, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Qin Feiyang shook his head and got up to look at the woman in the phoenix robe. His expression was extremely complicated as he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for saving me, Mississippi. I also sincerely apologize for my previous offense. If it wasn't for the divine sun elixir, with 10 dragon-shaped elixir chi from the woman in the phoenix robe. He was afraid that this time he would really be in trouble. It's okay. As long as you don't do such a dangerous thing next time. After all, controlling others is a very risky thing to do. As the woman in the phoenix robe spoke, she glanced at the sword of the Grim Reaper. The fear in her eyes could not be concealed. Qin Feiyang looked at Yin Zhongtian and said, "Elder Yun, put away the sword of the Grim Reaper." "Okay." Yin Zhongtian nodded. With a wave of his hand, the sword of the Grim Reaper disappeared into his body. The woman in the phoenix robe secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The divine flame on her body also retracted into her body. "May I ask, what is this divine flame?" Qin Feiyang was curious. "Of course it's to protect my things." The woman in the phoenix robe smiled proudly. "It seems that Mrs. status in the heavy region is not low. But there's something that I don't understand. Since the God-slaying tablet is Mrs. divine artifact, and according to Elder Yin in my judgment, the God-slaying tablet is at a critical moment of evolution. Why would Mississippi place it here?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. If it were him, he would definitely carefully protect the God-slaying tablet. The woman in the phoenix robe frowned and asked, "Have you noticed that the God-slaying tablet is evolving?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "You have good eyesight." The woman in the phoenix robe nodded in appreciation and said lightly, "The situation here is a little complicated. I can't explain it clearly in a short time. Moreover, I have no obligation to tell you." Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian looked at each other. A trace of helplessness crept onto their faces. Qin Feiyang asked again, "Then what about going to the core area?" "There's no room for discussion." The woman in the phoenix robe raised her head proudly. "Okay, I'll find a way to go in myself. As long as you can guarantee my safety when the time comes." Qin Feiyang nodded. In this situation, he had no choice but to give in. Yin Zhongtian asked in a low voice, "Brother Qin, aren't you going to wait for Brother Wolf King?" "Of course." Qin Feiyang replied without hesitation. Although the woman in the phoenix robe guaranteed, who knew what would happen when they entered the core area. Therefore, he was worried about leaving the white-eyed wolf alone outside. Moreover, with the Horsedale Whisk and the Sword of Death, he would have an additional ability to protect himself. However, what was the stance of this heavy region? Was it worth it for him to go and see? Because if he gambled wrongly, he would end up with his body smashed to pieces. Although the woman in the phoenix robe had already made a blood oath to guarantee his safety in the core area, what if she couldn't do it? After all, he didn't know much about the woman in the phoenix robe. At that time, not only would he die, but the woman in the phoenix robe would also die because of the blood oath. Don't think too much. Since you have already decided, then bravely go on. Besides, for this little girl to have a divine artifact like the God-slaying monument and 10 dragon elixirs with elixir chi, her identity and status should not be simple. She will definitely be able to help us. Yin Zhongtian could see the apprehension in Qin Feiyang's heart, and spoke to him telepathically. "What about you, Elder? If I really gambled wrongly this time, you will suffer along with me." Qin Feiyang thought to himself, "Life and death are fated. Riches and honor are in the hands of the heavens. This old man knows your current situation very well. If this old man was afraid of death, I would not have chosen to stand with you. On the other hand, since this old man has chosen to stand with you, that proves that this old man is prepared to sacrifice himself at any time. If that day really comes, this old man does not ask for much. I only ask that Brother Qin will treat my Yin family well." Yin Zhongtian smiled secretly. When Qin Feiyang heard those words, he could not help but stare blankly at Yin Zhongtian. After a long while he spoke with a smile. "Don't worry, Elder. Even if I die, I will not make you sacrifice yourself." Yin Zhongtian shook his head and laughed. To have that kind of heart was enough. Chapter 3540. Qin Feiyang looked up at the woman in the phoenix robe and said with a smile, "Since you don't want to take us to the core area, there's no need for you to follow us blindly. Are you trying to chase me away?" The woman in the phoenix robe was stunned. Qin Feiyang said, I think that you're wasting your time by staying with us now. I'm doing this for your sake. Then should I thank you? The woman in the phoenix robe was stunned. If you really want to thank me, that's fine. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shameless. The woman in the phoenix robe snorted and said indifferently, I really have to follow you now. What if you encounter any danger along the way, and the god-slaying tablet falls into the hands of others? Fine. Do whatever you want. Qin Feiyang had no choice but to turn to Yun Zhongtian and say, Let's go and find the white-eyed wolf. Okay. Yun Zhongtian nodded. The two of them stepped forward and went back the way they came. So slow. The woman in the phoenix robe followed behind and could not help but frown. At this speed, it would take a lot of time to even get to the inner area, let alone the core area. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days until the 5th day. The woman in the phoenix robe finally began to lose her patience and said with a frown, Where is the white-eyed wolf that you're talking about? Don't rush us. We're different from you. You're not bound by gravity and can travel thousands of miles in a minute, but we can only move forward step by step. A journey that should take half an hour will take at least 10 days to half a month. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. How troublesome. The woman in the phoenix robe muttered and looked ahead. Anyway, the white-eyed wolf is in this direction, right? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The woman in the phoenix robe waved her hand and swept up Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian before she shot through the air like lightning. The two of them looked at each other. The gravity around them disappeared in an instant. The feeling of not being bound by gravity was really comfortable. In just a few hundred breaths, the white-eyed wolf entered their sight. Stop. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the woman in the phoenix robe slammed on the brakes and stopped in the void. She looked at the white-eyed wolf in front and asked suspiciously, Isn't it the white-eyed wolf you're looking for? It is. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then why did you stop? The woman in the phoenix robe. Why are you asking so many questions? Can't you just watch quietly? Qin Feiyang glared at her. Bastard, you dare to glare at me? The woman in the phoenix robe. But Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian did not bother with him anymore as they watched the ingrate from afar. Tus to see to see. See the teat to look again. It tus to be hundreds to see it tus toit to see. To see. It to survive to see us to see to and. Hundreds of meters of the ground was stained with blood. This was the blood stain left by the white-eyed wolf. The gravity here had already reached its limit. It couldn't walk, and even standing was extremely difficult. But it had been persevering. Every time it wanted to give up, it would think of Qin Feiyang. If Qin Feiyang could do it, why couldn't it? Sometimes it would think of Lunatic. If Lunatic knew about it, he would definitely laugh at it. That was absolutely not possible. In fact, the white-eyed wolf's thoughts were very simple. There was no scheming or scheming. It simply didn't want to lose to Qin Feiyang and be laughed at by Lunatic. Therefore, it relied on this belief to persevere until now. No matter how uncomfortable and painful it was, its eyes shone with a determined light. Suddenly, it staggered and its weak body fell to the ground. I can't fall. It roared in its heart and forcibly stabilized its body. Shaking its head, it continued to move forward step by step. Under the pressure of gravity, blood flowed out, forming a bloody path. What is it doing? The lady in the phoenix robe was curious. But Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian did not bother with her as they stared fixedly at the ingrate, their hands clenched tightly as they muttered, Wolf cub, hold on. You can definitely do it. Another day passed. In the whole day, the white-eyed wolf had only walked 5 or 6 meters. This speed was slower than Qin Feiyang's. Of course, the gravity here was also incomparable to where Qin Feiyang was in the past. It could be said that, every meter, the gravity was different. And there was a disadvantage. The white-eyed wolf's cultivation was lower than Qin Feiyang's by a small realm. The white-eyed wolf raised its head with difficulty and looked at the dark sky. It muttered, Everyone says that I don't work hard and like to pick up ready-made things. Today, I will prove to you that there are times when I work hard too. With that, it continued to move forward. Every step was like walking in a quagmire. The injuries on its body were getting more and more serious. Blood kept dripping, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Until late at night, it swayed even more violently, like an old man on the verge of death. Its weak expression and powerless appearance were heartbreaking. Bang! Finally, it could not hold on any longer, and fell to the ground. Its eyes were dim and lifeless. Even breathing was difficult. If little Qinzi can do it, why can't I? Am I really not as good as little Qinzi? It lay there muttering silently. The woman in the phoenix dress turned to look at Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian. She frowned and said, "Are you going to just watch? Do you know that it is courting death?" "We know. If it were someone else, they would have died long ago." Qin Feiyang said. The woman in the phoenix dress was puzzled. "Since you know, why are you still leaving it alone?" Qin Feiyang said, "You don't understand it. If I step in now, not only will it not thank me, but it will also blame me." "Blame you?" The woman in the phoenix dress was stunned. She said speechlessly, "Then I really don't understand. The way you people get along is really strange." Qin Feiyang glanced at her indifferently, and continued to look at the white-eyed wolf. Time passed breath by breath. The white-eyed wolf lay on the ground with its eyes closed. It did not move at all, as if it had been centuries. Suddenly, the white-eyed wolf's motionless eyelids slowly opened. Although its eyes were weak, it gave people a feeling of sharpness like a blade. "I am Wolf King, the one with the fighting soul. My future is bright. How can I fall here? How can I lose to little Qinzi? No, I can't lose. Isn't it just gravity? What's so great about it?" The white-eyed wolf gritted its teeth and slowly got up. Every movement seemed to be extremely difficult. Then, it began to move forward slowly again. Its eyes were as tough as steel. Yin Zhongtian said with a smile, "Brother Wolf King, you are indeed extraordinary." Under this kind of gravity, if it was someone with the same cultivation as the white-eyed wolf, he admitted that he could not do it, because he had been to the heavy region several times. Before breaking through to the sovereign realm, he had never gone so deep. He had tried before. Could he reach the inner area with his iron-like willpower? But there was no way. In the end, he could not bear it, and could only retreat. He could not compare to the willpower of the white-eyed wolf. Time flew by. Dawn came, and the sky began to turn white. There were still some differences between the heavy region and the Een Demon Land. In the Een Demon Land, the sky was dark, and it was difficult to see the light. But the sky in the heavy region was no different from the sky outside. This was still possible. At least they could see the sunlight, and see a glimmer of hope. Woo-woo. But suddenly, there was the sound of wind coming from the left side. Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian were startled, and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw a storm madly sweeping towards them, affecting an area of dozens of miles. Damn it! At this time a storm actually came. For Brother Wolf King, isn't it one disaster after another? Yin Zhongtian cursed angrily. The phoenix-robed woman said indifferently, "It's just a small storm, what's the big deal? For you, not to mention a small storm, even a large storm doesn't matter. But for Brother Wolf King this is a disaster." Yin Zhongtian said in a deep voice. The last time the storm appeared, it was because the black-bearded old man and the others were there. Everyone worked together to avoid the disaster. But now, the white-eyed wolf was alone. And now, the white-eyed wolf was already extremely weak. He could not even stand steadily, let alone face the storm. It could be said that once he was submerged by the storm, the white-eyed wolf would be in a dead end. "Brother Qin." Yin Zhongtian looked anxiously at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to him as he stared at the white-eyed wolf. His hands were tightly clasped together as he muttered, "I believe in you, you can do it." At the same time, the white-eyed wolf heard the sound of the wind, and turned his head with difficulty to look at the storm. "Your sister. Even the heavens don't like me. Of all the times when the storm would come, it just had to come at this time. The most important thing was that it just so happened to pass by him. The central region was so big, and there was only such a small storm. Couldn't you pass by from other places?" Complaining was complaining, but he still had to face it seriously. With his current state, it was simply unrealistic for him to avoid the storm. And as the person involved, He could feel the danger that the storm brought. Horsetail Whisk, don't worry about me. I'm going to take a gamble. Life and death will be decided at this moment. The white-eyed wolf roared in his heart as he continued to gather strength in his body. This was a gamble of fate. If he was unable to break through the limits of his physical body before the storm came, then death would be the only outcome. Qin Feiyang's heart was also in his throat. Although Yin Zhongtian was anxious, but seeing that Qin Feiyang was not moving, he did not dare to move. Woo woo. The storm came with a vengeance, sweeping up sand and dust into the air. In the eyes of Qin Feiyang, Yin Zhongtian and the white-eyed wolf, it was as if the god of death had descended. Break for me. Seeing that the storm was about to swallow the white-eyed wolf whole, the white-eyed wolf roared, and all the strength that he had gathered, and that unyielding will burst out from his body. Clang clang. And it was at that moment that an ear-splitting sound exploded from within his body. His physical body was just like Qin Feiyang's when he first met him, exploding wildly as flesh and blood flew everywhere. But within that flesh and blood, there were rays of golden divine light. Good lad! If it had been anyone else who saw this scene, they would have thought that the white-eyed wolf was about to be smashed to pieces, his soul destroyed. But Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian were different. Seeing this scene, they were immediately overjoyed. Chapter 3541. Rumble. Accompanied by a thunderous roar, the golden light around the white-eyed wolf became even more dazzling. Facing the storm, although it was still on the verge of collapse, it was barely able to stabilize itself, and was not swept away by the storm. The storm came and went quickly. When the storm was over, the white-eyed wolf fell to the ground and fainted. But before he fainted, there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. Because he had successfully broken the limits of his physical body. This proved that he was not inferior to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian looked at each other and smiled. They then looked at the lady in the phoenix robe and said, "Miss, take us there." The lady in the phoenix robe glanced at the two, then waved her hand, and landed in front of the white-eyed wolf. Looking at the unconscious white-eyed wolf lying on the ground, the smile on Qin Feiyang's face grew wider. He then took out a divine life pill, and placed it in the white-eyed wolf's mouth. The horsetail Whisk also appeared and exclaimed, "This wolf cub's perseverance is not inferior to yours." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Who is she?" The horsetail Whisk noticed the lady in the phoenix robe and asked suspiciously, "She is the one we need to deal with," Qin Feiyang explained. The horsetail Whisk's heart trembled. Without saying anything more, it disappeared into Qin Feiyang's body. There is indeed another sovereign divine weapon. The lady in the phoenix robe saw the horsetail Whisk appear, and her pupil shrank slightly. He was so young, and yet he had two sovereign divine weapons. It seemed that this person's status in the outside world was not low. Suddenly, Yin Zhongtian looked at the white-eyed wolf with a trace of surprise in his eyes. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Yin Zhongtian exclaimed, "Look at its blood." "Blood?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. The lady in the phoenix robe was also stunned, and looked curiously at the white-eyed wolf. At that moment, there was a trace of surprise in their eyes. The white-eyed wolf's body emitted a golden light that was as dazzling as the sun. However, through the golden light, one could vaguely see that its blood was quietly changing. What happened? The three of them were perplexed. This was because there were strands of golden blood in the white-eyed wolf's blood. As time passed, the golden blood became more and more obvious. Furthermore, the golden blood seemed to carry a sacred aura. Golden bloodline power. Qin Feiyang muttered as he turned his head to look at Yin Zhongtian and asked, "Elder Yin, do you know of any wolves in this world that possess such bloodline powers?" "Never heard of it." Yin Zhongtian shook his head. Suddenly, the two of them simultaneously looked at the woman in the phoenix robe. The phoenix-robed woman glanced at the two of them, shook her head and said, "Don't look at me. This is the first time I've seen it." Even in the ancient books of my clan, I've never seen this kind of bloodline power. Strange. The three of them looked at the white-eyed wolf curiously. Time passed by slowly, About an hour later, the golden light on the white-eyed wolf's body gradually dissipated, and its blood had all turned golden, as dazzling as gold leaf. Within the sacred aura, there was also the aura of a king. It was as if a beast god was born. Qin Feiyang and the other two were puzzled. They couldn't tell what kind of bloodline power it was at all. Another hour passed. The white-eyed wolf's injuries had all healed. It lay on the ground snoring. What was even funnier was that it seemed to be dreaming of something delicious, and there was a trace of saliva at the corner of its mouth. This scene made Qin Feiyang extremely speechless. A foodie was still a foodie after all. The next morning, the white-eyed wolf stretched and opened its eyes. When it saw Qin Feiyang and the other two standing at the side, it was slightly stunned. Following that, it got up excitedly and checked its condition. Seeing that its injuries had healed, it felt the gravity around it, and the gravity had weakened greatly. Did I succeed? The white-eyed wolf scratched its head and looked at Qin Feiyang. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Haha. The white-eyed wolf suddenly couldn't help but raise its head and laugh. Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian looked at each other and smiled. It was really like a child. Brother knew it, I'm not worse than you. How is it? Now you have nothing to say. The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang proudly. Did I say anything? Qin Feiyang was speechless. You didn't say it. But who knows what you're thinking? The white-eyed wolf shut up and asked. When did you come back? Yesterday. We came back before the storm. Qin Feiyang said. The white-eyed wolf was stunned, frowning. Then you all saw it? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Yun Zhongtian smiled. From what you're saying, you don't want us to see it? The white-eyed wolf said angrily. Nonsense, of course I can't let you all see me in such a sorry state. Otherwise, why would I let you all leave first? Yun Zhongtian smiled bitterly when he heard that. He never thought that the white-eyed wolf would be so prideful. All right, we've already been seen anyway. The white-eyed wolf shook his head and sighed, then glanced at the lady in the phoenix robe and called out. Yo, little Qinzi, not bad. We haven't seen each other for a few days, and you've already abducted such a pretty little beauty. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. What do you mean abducted? Don't you know how to talk? Besides, it's only been a few days? More than half a month has passed. Qin Feiyang said. Let me introduce you. She's the person we're looking for. You can ask her for her name. The white-eyed wolf looked at the lady in the phoenix robe in surprise. After taking a closer look, there didn't seem to be anything outstanding about her. The white-eyed wolf said suspiciously. Little Qin Zi, with such a weak cultivation, are you sure she's the person we're looking for? Such a weak cultivation? The lady in the phoenix robe's face darkened. She was actually being looked down on by a wolf cub? Qin Feiyang glanced at the lady in the phoenix robe and said in a low voice. She's a little weak, but it shouldn't be wrong. The white-eyed wolf said disdainfully. What do you mean by a little weak? With such a weak cultivation, it's not enough. Are you guys done talking? The lady in the phoenix robe couldn't hold it in anymore. She stared at the white-eyed wolf and said, Are you very strong? You're just a sovereign realm expert. How dare you talk about me like that? The white-eyed wolf was stunned and said, Her cultivation is mediocre, but her temper is quite bad. Even if she's from the heavy regions, she's probably a spoiled young lady. Little Qinzi, we can't ally with such a person. I think so too. Qin Feiyang held back his laughter and nodded. You guys are going too far. Wolf cub, I want to fight you one-on-one. The lady in the phoenix robe was so angry that her face was flushed red. You want to fight me one-on-one? The white-eyed wolf was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed and said, Are you sure? I'm sure. The lady in the phoenix robe waved her hand, and the fifth profundity of the law of karma and the law of devour were instantly activated. Two supreme laws. The white-eyed wolf was quite surprised. Qin Feiyang and Yun Zhongtian looked at each other and consciously retreated to the side with a faint smile on their faces. Bullying the white-eyed wolf because he was a sovereign realm expert? Naive. It seemed that this woman was still lacking in experience. The lady in the phoenix robe looked at the white-eyed wolf and said coldly, It's not too late to apologize to me. Apologize to you? The white-eyed wolf laughed out loud. As his body trembled, the power of death surged out. A dark red full moon rose into the sky. Immediately, the world seemed to have turned into purgatory. The phoenix-robed woman's two great fifth profound meanings were immediately shattered with a loud explosion. Immediately after, the full moon was above the lady in the phoenix robe's head. The aura of death shrouded her, and she couldn't help but feel cold all over. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth and said, "You want me to apologize? You're too arrogant." The lady in the phoenix robe's face was filled with disbelief. The supreme profundity of the law of death. What was going on? He was actually able to comprehend a supreme profundity of an ultimate law at the sovereign realm. At the sovereign realm? What kind of people were they? Even a wolf cub was so terrifying. Do you still need me to apologize? The white-eyed wolf looked at her mockingly. Humph. The lady in the phoenix robe snorted and looked at the white-eyed wolf. If you have the ability, you can try to attack me. Still arrogant? I have a bad temper. The white-eyed wolf waved his claws, and the full moon immediately suppressed the lady in the phoenix robe. Don't. Qin Feiyang hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. He didn't want to hurt this woman. Besides, this woman had the protection of the divine flame, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't hurt her. The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows, and the full moon dissipated in the void. Seeing this, the lady in the phoenix robe smiled provocatively at the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf was instantly furious. All right. Why are you arguing with a woman? Qin Feiyang hurriedly comforted him, and then changed the topic. Look at your blood, it seems a little abnormal. My blood is abnormal? The white-eyed wolf was stunned and asked suspiciously. What do you mean? See for yourself. Qin Feiyang said. The white-eyed wolf immediately looked inside his body, and was stunned. Why did everything turn golden? Then, it cut his skin again, and drops of golden blood appeared, floating in the air. Looking at the golden blood, the white-eyed wolf was also stunned. When did this happen? After a while, the white-eyed wolf looked up at Qin Feiyang and asked. Qin Feiyang said, just after you broke the limit of your physical body. Broke the limit of my physical body? The lady in the phoenix robe was stunned. She looked at the white-eyed wolf, and a trace of understanding gradually appeared in her eyes. Then, she looked at Qin Feiyang again, and there was a trace of disbelief between her eyebrows. The man and the wolf were both monsters indeed. Damn, how did it become like this? The white-eyed wolf looked at the golden blood, his face full of confusion. You don't know what happened? Qin Feiyang asked. I don't know. I never thought that the power of the bloodline would change. The white-eyed wolf shook his head. Then how do you feel now? Qin Feiyang asked again. The white-eyed wolf looked at himself and shook his head. It's no different from before. Yin Zhongtian interrupted. It's impossible for there to be no difference when the power of the bloodline changes. It's just that we haven't noticed it yet. That's true. Qin Feiyang thought for a while, looked at the white-eyed wolf, and reminded him. You should pay more attention to yourself in the future. All right. The white-eyed wolf nodded, and then grinned. Is it possible that brother's bloodline power can compete with your purple gold dragon blood? This? Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and shook his head. The purple gold dragon blood has the ability to heal, and can also greatly increase one's talent and comprehension. But your bloodline power has not seen any advantages yet, so we will have to wait until the future to find out. I'm really looking forward to it. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Qin Feiyang had the power of the purple gold divine dragon's bloodline. Madman also had a very special power of the blood demon. Now it also had a mysterious bloodline power. It could be said that it did not lose to these two guys. Chapter 3542. Don't think about bloodline power for now. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and looked at the white-eyed wolf. He smiled and said, breaking the limit is only the first step. Let's work hard together. Okay. The white-eyed wolf nodded. Indeed, their physical bodies had only reached the level of a low-level divine artifact. They still needed to continue breaking through. Intermediate level, high level, peak level, legendary level, finally supreme level. Only when they reached the level of a supreme-level divine artifact would their physical bodies be considered perfect. At that time, they would be able to fight with a supreme-level divine artifact with their bare hands. Just thinking about it made them feel impressive. Then let's go. Qin Feiyang turned around and looked into the depths of the desert. His eyes were filled with determination, since the lady in Phoenix did not want to take them directly to the core area. They might as well calm down and take the opportunity to strengthen their physical bodies. The strengthening of their physical bodies was also a powerful method. Time flew by and a day passed. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf's unhurried attitude, the lady in Phoenix frowned and asked, "Are you really not in a hurry at all?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "We are not in a hurry. Why are we in a hurry?" "But don't you want to go to the core area?" the lady in Phoenix asked. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. The lady in Phoenix smiled and said, "Since you want to go, then beg me. Maybe if I am in a good mood, I will take you directly to the core area." "Beg you?" Qin Feiyang looked at the lady in Phoenix in astonishment. So this was her plan to force them to lower their heads. He laughed and said, "There is no need for now. If you think it is troublesome, you can go back first." "Isn't that right? We are not forcing you to be with us." The white-eyed wolf smiled mockingly. "Okay, let's see how long you can last." The lady in Phoenix snorted and followed silently. When Yun Zhongtian saw this scene, he transmitted his voice over with a laugh. "Brother Qin, Brother Wolf King, there's something I have to say. This little girl here is rather adorable." Qin Feiyang glanced at the lady in the phoenix robe and thought to himself, "She looks cute now, but it's hard to say what will happen in the future. It's best to be careful so as to avoid being cheated." Yun Zhongtian nodded his head to himself. As they went deeper, Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf felt that the gravity was becoming more and more terrifying. More than a month passed. The white-eyed wolf was once again caught in a difficult situation. After all, its cultivation base was one stage lower than Qin Feiyang's. "Why don't you leave first?" the white-eyed wolf panted as he looked at Qin Feiyang. "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded. This was because the gravity here had yet to reach his current limit. As usual, Qin Feiyang left the horsetail whisk to the white-eyed wolf in case something unexpected happened. Another half a month passed. Qin Feiyang had finally reached his limit. Under the terrifying gravity, his legs felt as if they were stuck in a quagmire, unable to move an inch. However, he did not stop and force himself forward step by step. At first, his skin gradually cracked under the pressure of the gravity, and purple-gold dragon blood soaked his entire body. Not long after, even the bones in his body were breaking. The tearing pain was constantly attacking every nerve in his body. But from the beginning to the end, Qin Feiyang did not even frown, as if he did not know the pain. Even the lady in the phoenix robe was impressed by his patience. Boom! A few days later, Qin Feiyang's body surged with divine light, and a powerful aura rushed out from his body. This was not the aura of cultivation, but the aura of his physical body. After 2 months of tempering, his physical body had finally stepped into the level of a mid-level divine artifact. The moment his physical body evolved, the gravity around him weakened again. Yun Zhongtian hurriedly took out the divine life pill and fed it to Qin Feiyang. After 2 days of recuperation, his injuries were finally healed. Feeling the strength of his physical body and strength, Qin Feiyang was rather excited. He had not wasted so much time. Yun Zhongtian looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "I feel that this breakthrough is much easier than the last time. After all, the first step is always the most difficult. As long as you successfully take the first step, the rest of the journey, as long as you work tirelessly, will basically be smooth sailing." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Then all the best to you," Yun Zhongtian encouraged. "Do you want to give it a try?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. "Me?" Yun Zhongtian was taken aback for a moment before he shook his head and said with a smile, "Forget it. These old bones of mine will not be able to withstand such torment. Most importantly, I really do not have the confidence to do it. After all, I have already tried it many years ago." "All right then." Qin Feiyang nodded. Such a thing could not be forced. What if Yin Zhongtian were to accidentally fall? He would not be able to go back and report to Yin Guanghui and Yin Zhongyue. Moreover, for most people, the mysteries of the laws were the most important. For example, Yin Zhongtian, rather than spending time tempering his physical body and tormenting himself to death, it was better to calm down and comprehend the mysteries of the laws. In short, generally speaking, older people had lost their youthful spirit and sharpness, and did not like to torment themselves. I wonder if the white-eyed wolf has successfully stepped into the second step. Qin Feiyang looked back at the desert behind him and muttered to himself before he continued to move forward. Whether it was for Qin Feiyang or the white-eyed wolf, the significance of being in the heavy region had now changed. In the past it was an adventure, but now for them, it was a cultivation. Time had become unimportant to them now. Whether it was a few years, decades, or centuries, as long as they could improve their physical body to the supreme level, it did not matter. Cultivation was very difficult, especially the tempering of the physical body. Not only did they have to endure the pain of the physical body, but they also had to endure the mental and spiritual torment. In short, this was a torture to the body, mind, and soul. 4 months later, boom! Qin Feiyang finally stepped into the third step. The strength of his physical body and strength had reached the supreme level. Even with his perseverance and temperament, he felt extremely tired now. However, there was an old saying that the effort and the reward were proportionate. If you don't work hard, can you have everything you want? Of course not. So, no matter how tired he was, he persevered. As for Yin Zhongtian, he had been following Qin Feiyang closely. On one hand, he had to be ready to face the danger of the storm at any time, and on the other hand, he had to be careful of other people's sneak attacks. Of course, sneak attacks were rare. After all, Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian's strength and status were in front of them. As long as they did not encounter vicious and daring people like the Ma Shan brothers, they basically would not dare to sneak attack them. The most important thing to guard against was the woman in the phoenix robe, because when he made the blood oath, it did not mention this. In other words, even if the woman in the phoenix robe were to sneak attack them, she would not suffer the wrath of the heavens. However, the woman in the phoenix robe did not dare to act rashly. After all, Yin Zhongtian's Sea of Qi had long been restored, and with Yin Zhongtian's strength alone, it was enough to crush her, not to mention the sword of the death god, the sovereign divine weapon. However, she was feeling a little bored now. Why don't I give it a try as well? Gradually, the woman in the phoenix robe had this thought. Seeing Qin Feiyang's physical body breaking through again and again, she could not help but feel a strong desire to be strong. If even a human could do it, why couldn't she? But, every time she saw Qin Feiyang's pained look, she could not help but feel the urge to retreat. Because such torment was not something any ordinary person could endure. Time was like sand between one's fingers, passing by in the blink of an eye. Another half a year passed. Boom! On this day, Qin Feiyang's physical body had finally stepped into the pinnacle of the heaven-defying level. This time, he lay on the ground for several days before he recovered. The pinnacle of the heaven-defying level was equivalent to the strength of a pinnacle of the heaven-defying level. Every piece of flesh seemed to be cast from divine iron, filled with terrifying power. Not to mention Yin Zhongtian and the woman in the phoenix robe. Even Qin Feiyang himself did not expect that his physical body could reach such a height. At this moment, they had also reached the center of the central region. If his physical body had not evolved, Qin Feiyang would definitely be crushed to pieces by the gravity here. Even Yin Zhongtian felt a great pressure now, as if there were 2 iron balls tied to his feet. Every step was very difficult. How long have we been in the heavy region? Qin Feiyang asked. More than a year. Yin Zhongtian said. So fast. More than a year. Although my physical body has improved a lot, my cultivation has not improved. On the other hand, senior brother Frenzy and the others are cultivating there. I'm afraid they have already stepped into the sovereign realm. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. 1 day was 5,000 years. 10 days was 50,000 years. 100 days was 500,000 years. Let's say 1 year. Based on 1 day's 5,000 years, it was more than 7 million years. In other words, adding the other time, Frenzy and the others had been on Sky Cloud Island for at least 2 million years. 2 million years, if it was someone else, they might not be able to break through. But Frenzy and the others were different. Each of them had opened the door of potential, and with the little rabbit's nurturing, it was definitely more than enough. Especially Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the other 10 commanders, and the 6,000 secret guards. These people were originally perfect sovereigns. What they needed to do now was to comprehend the ultimates. Perhaps Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan had already comprehended the third, or even the fourth ultimates. After all, they who had opened the door of potential had been reborn, and were no longer the same as before. So, Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf had to work harder. Day after day, another year passed. Boom! On this day, accompanied by a terrifying aura, Qin Feiyang's physical body stepped into the legendary realm. Every inch of his skin was shining, as if it had transformed into a sharp sword, sharp and threatening. He's trying to improve his flesh to the heaven-defying 9 heavens supreme level in one go, the phoenix-robed woman muttered. Counting the time, more than 2 years had passed. Although she rarely talked to Qin Feiyang along the way, she had seen Qin Feiyang's performance. Someone like him who wasn't afraid of hardships and pain. She couldn't find anyone like him even in her clan. If the people of the dragon saw this, they would probably collapse, encountering such a fearless opponent. Chapter 35-43. After recuperating for several days, Qin Feiyang looked at Yin Zhongtian and asked, "How much longer do we need to reach the inner region?" Yin Zhongtian pondered for a moment before saying, "Based on this old man's speed, we should have reached the inner region by now. But you've delayed us quite a bit along the way, and it will probably take another year." Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said with a smile, "Then let's continue. I hope that before we reach the inner region, we will be able to evolve our physical body to the supreme being level." All right. Yin Zhongtian nodded. A year's time to a cultivator was but a blink of an eye. Thinking back, when Qin Feiyang and the others were in the alliance capital, they would go into seclusion for hundreds of years. On this day, a black river appeared in the desert before them. The river was about 100 meters wide, like a long black dragon, stretching to the ends of the earth on both sides. What was even stranger was that the water of the river was black in color. For such a river to appear in such a place, just one look at it would cause one's heart to fluster. But the river water was calm. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice that the river water was flowing. Yin Zhongtian pointed at the black river and said excitedly, "Brother Qin, that river is the dividing line between the inner region and the central region." Qin Feiyang quickened his steps and walked to the side of the river, sweeping his eyes over the water. It was a little strange. The river water looked calm and normal, but he could feel a great threat from it. The phoenix-robed lady said softly, "This river is called the River of the Underworld, and it surrounds the entire inner region. If you want to enter the core region, you will first have to pass through the River of the Underworld. So it's called the River of the Underworld." Yin Zhongtian nodded in realization. Qin Feiyang said, "Passing through the River of the Underworld should be simple." Simple? Yin Zhongtian and the phoenix-robed lady were stunned. Yin Zhongtian came back to his senses and quickly said, "Brother Qin, this is not simple. Don't just look at the River of the Underworld. On the surface it does not look dangerous, but in actual fact there are hidden dangers." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The water of the River of the Underworld contains a terrifying power that can erode one's soul. Any living being that enters the Underworld River will have their souls instantly corroded by the river water. Although the river is only 100 meters long, we can't fly because of gravity, so we can only swim across. However, the corrosive power of the river is enough to erode our souls in the middle of the river. Furthermore, this river water possesses a terrifying corrosive power. Not to mention our bodies of flesh and blood. Even supreme-level heaven-defying divine weapons can be corroded by it. Tell me now, is it simple? Yin Zhongtian smiled bitterly. This was the first time he heard someone say that crossing the Nether River was a simple matter. Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. If that was the case, it would be a bit of a headache. The last time I was here, I saw with my own eyes 2 perfect sovereigns trying to cross the Netherworld River by relying on their supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifacts. However, in the end, they all ended up dying in the river. I wanted to help them, but I was unable to. So after that, I consciously left the heavy realm and never came back. Yin Zhongtian sighed. Qin Feiyang glanced at the river of the underworld, and then looked up at the inner region. It was still an endless black desert. He frowned and said, "The current gravity is not enough to elevate my physical body to the supreme-level heaven-defying divine weapon. I have to cross the river of the underworld and enter the inner region. Beg me, I'll help you." The woman in the phoenix robe looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Qin Feiyang glanced at her and snorted. "If it weren't for you being able to ignore the rules of the heavy realm, you wouldn't even have the ability to reach here, let alone crossing the river of the underworld and reaching the inner region." The woman in the phoenix robe was not angry. She said indifferently, "The key is that I can ignore the rules of the heavy realm. You risked your life to get here, but I can easily enter the inner region. Don't you think that's infuriating?" Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He wasn't infuriated about this. However, this woman's smug look was really infuriating. Suddenly, Yin Zhongtian chuckled again as he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "However, things are different now." Qin Feiyang looked at Yin Zhongtian suspiciously. "Back then, I was stopped at the river of the underworld because I didn't have a sovereign divine weapon. But now the sword of Thanatos is in my hands. It shouldn't be difficult to enter the inner region." Yin Zhongtian laughed. Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. He looked at the woman in the phoenix robe and said with a smile, "It seems that your little plan is going to be destroyed again. But don't give up. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Let me lower my head and beg you." "Humph." The woman in the phoenix robe snorted coldly and did not forget to glare at Yin Zhongtian. What a troublesome old man. "But do we need to wait for Brother Wolf King? Although the Horsedale Whisk is following it, I feel a little worried about leaving it behind alone." Yin Zhongtian looked at the desert behind them with a worried expression. "Don't worry. Everything else aside, it still has quite a number of ways to save its life. But we can leave a sign here. When it rushes over, it will know that we have entered the inner region." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "All right." Yin Zhongtian nodded, and with a wave of his aged hand, the sand beneath his feet surged and gradually formed a tall stone tablet. He then used his divine powers to temper it, to prevent it from collapsing. After that, he carved a few lines of small words on the stone tablet. The general content was about the situation of the river of the underworld and the method to cross it. After doing all that, Yin Zhongtian took out the sword of Thanatos. The woman in the phoenix robe said indifferently, "Seeing how troublesome you are, I'll be merciful and bring you all over." "Don't. I really don't dare to accept your kindness. What if when we are in the middle of the river, and you suddenly throw us into the river of the underworld? Then I won't even have the chance to seek revenge on you as a ghost." Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. "What do you mean? Am I as despicable as you say?" The woman in the phoenix robe said angrily, "Whether you are despicable or not, I don't know. But I know that you cannot be trusted." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he looked at Yin Zhongtian and smiled. "Elder Yin, the gravity in the inner region must be very terrifying. Are you ready?" Yin Zhongtian nodded. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at the sword of Thanatos, saying, "Then I'll leave it to you." Clang! The sword of Thanatos immediately came to life, and a terrifying divine aura swept out in all directions. When Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian leaped onto the sword of Thanatos, the sword of Thanatos flew the two of them to the opposite side. The woman in the phoenix robe pursed her lips and took a step forward, landing on the opposite bank. She then turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian expressionlessly. But if one looked closely, one would notice that there was a hint of playfulness in her eyes. With the protection of the sovereign divine weapon, Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian were not too nervous, and smoothly reached the other side of the river, officially stepping into the inner region. However, the moment they stepped into the inner region, a terrifying gravitational force enveloped them. With a loud bang, caught off guard, Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian fell from the sword of Thanatos, smashing into the desert. Pressed down by the gravitational force, not only were they unable to move, even the pores on their bodies were violently spewing out blood. Even the sword of Thanatos was pressed down by the gravitational force, and it took a lot of effort to stabilize itself. What a terrifying gravitational force! It's almost 10 times that of the opposite bank. The sword of Thanatos released its divine aura, enveloping the two of them. Only then did Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian feel a little better. They crawled up from the ground, their faces covered in dust and dirt, looking extremely miserable. This feeling, it must not be good. The woman in the phoenix robe looked at Qin Feiyang gloatingly. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at her, and swallowed a life elixir, scanning the void. Even with the help of the sword of Thanatos, he could still feel an unparalleled sense of oppression. Yin Zhongtian looked at the sword of Thanatos and asked, "How do you feel?" The sword of Thanatos pondered for a moment and said, "Right now, I can still help you, but in the depths of the inner region, I'm afraid." At this point, Qin Feiyang and Yin Zhongtian already understood the meaning of the sword of Thanatos. As expected, none of the forbidden lands are good. Qin Feiyang sighed. In the inner region of the Yin demon land, no one could withstand the erosion of the Yin demon power. And in the inner region of the heavy domain, even the sovereign divine weapon was helpless against the gravitational force. It seemed that in order to enter the core region, they would really need the help of the woman in the phoenix robe. "It's not too late to beg me now," the woman in the phoenix robe said with a smile. Qin Feiyang glanced at her, then looked at the sword of Thanatos and said, "I'll have to trouble you, help us a little longer." With that, he sat down cross-legged on the ground, healing his injuries. Although it had only been a short while, he had truly felt the aura of death. So, in order to break the limits of the physical body here, he must first adjust his condition. A day passed. Qin Feiyang's essence, energy, and spirit had finally recovered to their peak state. Taking a deep breath, he looked at the sword of Thanatos and said in a deep voice, "Let's begin." The sword of Thanatos immediately withdrew the divine aura that enveloped Qin Feiyang. Boom! The gravitational force surged, and Qin Feiyang's entire body was immediately pressed into the desert. All over his body, his skin and flesh were torn open and blood flowed out. Crack! Accompanied by a series of crisp sounds, all the bones in his body were broken. The omnipresent gravitational force seemed to be squeezing him to death, and the ground was instantly soaked in purple gold dragon blood. Looking at this scene, Yin Zhongtian's eyelids twitched, and he exclaimed, "Why don't you give up? Your physical body is already so strong. There's no need to risk your life like this." But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear. He really did not hear it, because at this moment, his consciousness was also dissipating. Gravity, like an invisible hand, grabbed him and squeezed him. At this moment, an uncontrollable despair rose in his heart. The limit is broken. I must not compromise. But the conviction that was branded in his heart was not destroyed. His fighting spirit and will, like forged steel, would never be extinguished. If fate was unfair, then fate would be broken. If the heavens were not benevolent, then the heavens would be pierced. Even if there were endless trials and tribulations, it would not be able to destroy his determination to break the cage of heaven and earth, and to descend beyond the heavens. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly surged from Qin Feiyang's body. This was the manifestation of his fighting spirit, and it contained his firm conviction. At this moment, heaven and earth could not help but shake, as if unable to bear Qin Feiyang's fighting spirit and conviction. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey. through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.